If you've always cared to reach out to others and you've always believed that every child deserves a dignified life, then you are aware that the needs of your community are many and you want to do more. Get to know us. For over 130 years, we have dedicated our lives to children in communities across the nation. Our volunteers focus on indispensable support for children in need so they can build self-esteem and independence. We are Christ Child Society. We provide newborn baby bundles, necessities and education for new mothers, mentoring, tutoring, and interactive educational and literacy programs. We do this because we believe that when we invest in our children, we invest in our collective future, and it starts with you. Reward yourself with the experience of being part of something bigger. Get to know Christ Child Society today.
Good morning, good afternoon, or for many of us, I'm not sure what time of day it really is. I hope you all enjoyed our new NCCS ad that kicked off our event. More on that later. I'm Carol Pickle, president of the board, and I want to welcome all of you to our first and hopefully last virtual mini convention. It was not easy for the board to cancel our annual business meeting and convention. The board was excited to present our annual seminars and outside speakers. We all miss getting to know chapter members a bit better in person. We miss the camaraderie that comes from sharing the struggles and successes of everyday chapter life. And we miss the reminder that we are all part of a national organization and not alone. In 1887, Mary Virginia Merrick founded Christ Child in Washington, D.C. Although happy with a local presence, I'm sure she discovered that need knew no boundaries. And in 1904, the Baltimore branch was established. From there, the Christ Child spirit was spread across the U.S. In 1916, branches were organized under the National Christ Child Society name. 1927 brought the first convention, and by 1932, we had 33 chapters. Since 1887, NCCS has served 83 communities with a combined total of 3,279 years of service. We have 6 active chapters over 100 years old, and we continue on. Our relationship with local children in need of resources lets them know that someone cares for them. That new coat, set of clothes, or books tells them that they are worthy. The time spent on reading, tutoring, and just being there allows those kids to experience generosity of the heart. As chapters, we fight poverty one child at a time, and on a national level, one community at a time. As Mary Virginia Merrick said later in her life, quote, "Our purpose remains the same through these many years, to fill the needs of children, which explains the varying activities that help the whole child. I'm happy to note that this cause has been maintained through the zeal and interest of its members, for personal contact and personal service awaken true charity." Today, you will hear what has been accomplished at the national level via our committee reports. Since we were unable to hold our always very exciting annual business meeting, we had to conduct our voting on the NCCS budget, 2020-2022 board slate, and proposed bylaw changes via email with designated delegates. We will announce the results of those votes a little later. You will have a chance to see the bright, shiny faces of our new board, and I know that all will be thanking them for saying yes. We will be playing videos from our newly chartered chapters and other chapters who so generously donated to help underwrite this production. We then move on to our featured presentation by Candid, which will focus on new fundraising ideas geared toward this crazy time. Awards, a tour of the national office, as well as new and exciting, well, at least exciting to me, initiatives are coming your way. We wind it down with a thank you to the outgoing board and vision for the 2020-2022 term from our newly elected president. So please sit back and enjoy the NCCS 2020 Virtual Mini Convention. As we begin each meeting, let us say the Christ Child prayer together. Remember in this sacrifice of your own and only child, all children everywhere throughout the world, and grant that, like your Son, as they increase in years, they may grow in grace and wisdom before you and in the sight of all, for the improvement and saving of the world. Jesus, the friend of little children, bless the little children of the world. We now begin our committee reports. Our theme for the 2018-2020 board has been Energize, Inspire, Advance. And I think our committees and members have been true to those words. You will hear from our committee chairs about the renewed energy and commitment to our strategic plan goals. Our development and communications committees will hopefully inspire you as to what has been accomplished and what is in the works. And our membership and expansion committees have some exciting news on new initiatives and a new expansion approach that we are all certain will help to advance our mission. As president, I begin this term headed straight up with lofty goals and ideas. And then, our very capable executive director resigned to spend more time with her family. After some prayers to Mary Virginia Merrick and a wonderful search committee, we gained another very capable executive director in Maura Lynch, and we were onward and upward again. Committee and office work were going full speed ahead. Plans for the convention and our National Day of Service were in the works, and then, COVID-19 hit. Not only did we have to pivot, bob, and weave, but more importantly, you, our chapter members, were not able to provide services and hold your fundraisers. I'm not going to lie, I did ask myself why this couldn't have happened to the next president, but realized that that was not very Mary Virginia Merrick of me. So we all put on our big girl panties and barreled ahead. Working together, the board and office made the difficult decision to cancel the convention and annual business meeting. We found a way to have a virtual event and email voting. We all learned to Zoom, which required us to shower and put on makeup before our calls. We gave suggestions to chapters for virtual fundraisers and new program ideas. Now, many chapters were already Zooming and filling the new needs in their communities. I think we are all realizing that we may still be on that roller coaster for a bit, but we can still be of service. We just need to free our minds to new possibilities. I hope we all look back at this time and say, wow, we made it through, stronger and more dedicated to our mission. And now for our Finance Committee report, here is our treasurer, Jean Phelan.
Thank you, Carol. I'm Jean Phelan, the treasurer and the chairman of the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee oversees the financial resources of the National Christ Child Society. It makes sure that the board and staff are good stewards of the money. It is involved in the preparation and implementation of the policies and procedures governing financial resources subject to the approval of the board. It has the duty to make sure the financial statements are prepared and analyzed properly. A monthly treasurer's report is prepared by Kristen O'Donnell, the National Christ Child Society bookkeeper, and presented to the board by the treasurer. The committee has a responsibility to make sure the budget is adhered to. The annual budget is prepared by the executive director and the bookkeeper for approval by the Finance Committee. It then goes to the board for approval, with the final approval being voted on by the delegates at the annual business meeting. I would like to report that the delegation of the 2020 National Christ Child Convention has voted on the budget, and it has been approved. All large financial decisions should be analyzed by the committee and presented to the board for approval. The Finance Committee is responsible to make sure that the National Christ Child Society has adequate insurance coverage. This year, 2020, a new CPA firm was hired. There were 3 firms that bid on our work. The Hahn Group came in highly recommended and were the lowest bidders for the service we required. They are now our accounting firm. Their main functions are to prepare the audit and the IRS Form 990, the nonprofit tax return. The audit is reviewed and approved by the Finance Committee after approval by the Audit Committee and before being presented for approval by the board. The IRS Form 990 is reviewed and approved by the Finance Committee before being presented for approval by the board. The Finance Committee is an advisory committee that is restricted to giving advice and making recommendations to the board and implementing board decisions and policies. Thank you. I would like to introduce you to Beth Barrett, Program Chairman.
Thank you, Jean. Hello, I'm Beth Barrett, the Program Committee Chair. The National Strategic Plan for 2017 to 21 was the guide for most of the work of the Program Committee in the past few years. The goal was to share, leverage, and expand chapter programs. In coordination with the Communications and Development Committees, the good news about our programs has been shared with members and supporters through the newsletter, social media, and the National Impact Statement. We leverage the powerful stories we've been able to tell to grow chapters and support fund development. In working with chapters, it became clear that the most impactful programs were those that brought volunteers in direct, meaningful contact with children. 70% of our chapters have such programs. Imagine how many lives have been enriched by the presence of Christ Child. The strategic plan called for the national website to be a hub of useful information for leaders and volunteers. This year, we focus on accessible content that can help chapters cultivate quality programs. The revised program content is noted on this slide. It's designed to support the chapters in building the best programs possible. Chapters were asked to send descriptions of all their programs other than layouts, along with the annual chapter report this past spring. Those descriptions will be available on the website, so we can share what Christ Child is doing to challenge poverty across the country. Should major changes be made to existing programs or new programs added, please inform the national office so the catalog can be updated. Once the Communications Committee completes work with the web designer, the updated programs section will be available on the website. Finally, be sure to make use of these materials provided by National, also available on the website. The Read to Me card, Calming Your Baby card, and the blanket safety tag are all important additions to layouts. The self-esteem bookmark can be used in any educational setting. As I finish my final program report, I want to thank all of the presidents and program chairs I've met over the past 6 years. You've reinforced my love of the Christ Child Society and given me hope that it will nurture children for many years to come. Now, I'd like you to welcome Molly Fanning, President-elect.
Thank you, Beth. Again, I'm Molly Fanning. It is the job of the chair of the Communications Committee and the committee members to coordinate with the president and executive director and other NCCS committees the various communications projects of the National Christ Child Society, based on the goal of the strategic plan to communicate our story, value, and impact to all NCCS audiences. Those include, but are not limited to, our social media posts, newsletters, president's blog, national news, conference and convention promotions, annual fund reminders, website updates, brochure creation, and email blasts. Our planning vehicle is a communications editorial calendar, a monthly spreadsheet of topics and deadlines available to all board members. The Communications Committee most recently has been involved in updating our mission statement. to more clearly state who we are and what we do to the general public, our potential members, and our chapter leaders. The mission statement, the National Christ Child Society, through its chapters, is dedicated to providing services to children in need, regardless of race or creed, was approved for use by the June board meeting. This was taken up in conjunction with a complete website update in an effort to better express our mission, the role of National, while always highlighting the impact of the works of our chapters. Phase 1 of the website has been completed, with Phase 2 budgeted in 2021. The Development Committee spearheaded a new effort that we're calling our Get to Know Us campaign, with the creation of a short video and related promotional materials to use to more widely promote National Christ Child Society, our chapters, and to promote chapter expansion. The Communications Committee will continue to work with the Development Committee to plan the rollout of these completed components of this program late 2020 and into 2021. I will now move on with the Education Committee report. It's the job of the Education Committee chair and her members to coordinate with the president and the executive director and other NCCS committees the education efforts, especially during conference and convention, and to plan other educational calls or webinars. Most recently, the documents and the member resources pages of our website have been updated for the 2020 website launch or are under review so that we can provide the most up-to-date content for our chapters to use. As always, we urge chapter members to utilize the member resource section of the website to find a treasure trove of useful content for chapter leadership, board orientation, specific board position responsibility checklists, program development content, membership, and spiritual event resources. There's also a great deal of history of the Christ Child Society in our founder, Mary Merrick. A great deal of effort by many board members has been put into updating the challenging poverty materials and other program resources, the chapter formation guide and other membership resources, and the chapter guide. These are available to you 24/7 on our website. And of course, the office is available by phone during business hours. And any board member, especially your board liaison, will be happy to help you find the right resources for your specific questions. Next, you'll hear from Angela Schneider, our incoming president-elect from the Tucson chapter, giving her report on the membership committee.
Thank you, Molly. I'm Angela Schneider, chair of the membership committee. It has been my pleasure to work with Loretta Hall, Casey Long, Jean Phelan, and Margaret Whalen. I have received so many blessings from these remarkably talented women. I'd like to share briefly what we have done in hopes you will have lots of great energy and ideas for your chapter's growth. The Chapter Liaison Program was first introduced at the 2019 conference in Bethesda, where the main goal of the program was to link together each chapter to the national board. It was evident that when we join our love, friendships, resources of the national board with our members, we can link our time, talents, and treasures to continue the dream of our founder, Mary Virginia Merrick. Working together, we are unstoppable. The past year, our membership committee worked on finishing the long-term goals on the CLP. In conclusion of our work, the following recommendations were presented to the board. That a chapter put aside funds in their budget to cover the expenses to send 1 or 2 members to the conference or convention. To provide mentoring of members by training in leadership skills, resulting in recommendations to serve on the national board. That within every chapter, an individual be appointed to follow up with members that relocate and determine if there is an opportunity to form a new chapter in that community. that chapter liaisons maintain a clear channel of communication with National for the purpose of seeking information, sharing news and events, as well as addressing concerns. Our work continued by developing a junior Christ child that will benefit and help chapters to educate younger people and our communities on the history, mission, and current programs of Christ Child, as well as recruit new volunteers and members. We researched components of several existing junior volunteer programs in South Bend, Summit, Detroit, Milwaukee, and the National Charity League. The committee has developed recommendations and suggestions. If your chapter is considering adding a junior Christ child, you will hear more about this program later in the day from Carol. In conclusion, our committee has updated the following. Member resources have been revised with additional resources added, such as a sample new membership form, how to use the brand matrix as a recruiting tool, sample press releases. These and other items have been submitted to the office for implementation on the website. The membership section of the chapter guide, section 6, has been updated and submitted for your approval. Thank you so very much. Mary Virginia Merrick, pray for us. And now I'd like to turn you over to Loretta.
Thank you, Angela, and greetings, fellow Christ Child members. My name is Loretta Hall. This has been a very exciting year of expansion, with 3 of our chapters in formation, completing their provisional requirements, with a successful year full of inspiring activities. Continuing that excitement is our newest chapter, now forming in Oahu, Hawaii. You'll have a chance to meet all 4 of these new leaders and hear what's going on around the country a short time from now. It's with great joy that we have met the goal of our strategic plan to add 4 new chapters by the end of 2021. Western Massachusetts, Greater Binghamton, Dallas-Fort Worth, Oahu, Hawaii. One of the ways we can all serve the needs of children at risk is to develop and grow new chapters. And with 2020 vision, we are focused on the future. New opportunities in technology, such as FaceTime and Zoom, will complement our work. The future of the expansion effort envisions a different approach. We are shifting from a reactive to a proactive strategy as we consider a remote startup, where the initiation of a chapter may begin with the administration, the board, or perhaps you. The strategy promotes reaching out to diocesan leadership and parish communities. By introducing ourselves, who we are and what we do, the mission of Mary Virginia Merrick, we can develop fruitful relationships that will grow and blossom into new chapters. We have work to do, and I ask all of you to pray for this work, to support expansion by identifying areas in need of a chapter. It was Mary Virginia Merrick's vision that her mission would spread far and wide. In her words, "The coming year, O my God, I give to thee. I welcome all it holds, and I am glad, oh glad to think that thou holdest the future in thy hand." Thank you and God's blessing. And next, you will hear from our President, Carol Pickle, reporting on development.
Thank you, Loretta. After the 2018 convention, the Development Committee, consisting of myself, Carol Pickle, Mary Beth Bacco, Molly Fanning, Tricia Boland-Jones, Becky Sarney, Margaret Strong, and Maura Lynch, began planning our efforts to identify and procure grants and other outside donors who will support our mission. It took us a bit of time to research and outline goals, objectives, targets, and methods. We were told that the grant process and procurement of larger individual donors would probably take a few years. Well, that seems to be the case. We have secured a couple of small donations, Southwest airline vouchers that help with our board travel, as well as a grant to buy 3 new office laptop computers. Thank you, Maura, for those. We are waiting to hear about a grant to underwrite our Read to Me and Calm Your Baby cards, as well as provide funds for book grants to our chapters. Mary Virginia Merrick, pray for us. However, as a national presence, it is a bit trickier to secure donations since we do not have any direct programs of our own. We are focusing on the educational aspect that we provide to our chapters and will continue to pursue this going forward. Rest assured, though, that we are not disheartened by this obstacle, but only more determined to overcome this challenge. We have updated our impact statement as well as our annual giving materials to inspire more donations. We are working with the Communications Committee to make sure our national and chapter stories reach more people. You will hear about our new Get to Know Us campaign later. We will be doing another planned giving mailing in the spring. And we thank those 13 women who have become part of our Legacy Society by committing to name NCCS in their will or insurance policy. The Development Committee will also be venturing into the world of social influencers who identify with our mission. And as we have been doing in the past, we will continue to pass along to you any grant or donation opportunities we find are a good fit for your chapter. I am excited for the future of these efforts. Mary Beth Bacco will now take over to give you the results of the bylaw and nominating slate votes that you sent in last month. Mary Beth?
Thank you, Carol. The 2020 Bylaws Committee consisted of myself, Mary Beth Bacco, immediate past national president, Carol Pickle, the current national president, and Linda Toth, past national president, with additional national board input. The committee received and reviewed 13 proposed bylaw amendments and 1 new bylaw. A copy of the proposed new bylaw, as well as the bylaw amendments, were sent to all chapter presidents, chapter delegates, and Gavel Club members. A teleconference call was held on August 18th to review the bylaws and answer all questions. Additional questions were also answered via email after the August 18th call. The Bylaws Committee recommended that the proposed amendments and new bylaw be adopted, and they were also approved by the current National Board of Directors. A final copy of the bylaws document was sent to chapter presidents, delegates, current National Board members, and Gavel Club members, so they could vote to accept or reject the bylaws, the amendments, and the new bylaw. The process required a 2/3 vote to adopt the amendments and the new bylaw. All 13 bylaws amendments and the new bylaw, number 15.08, were approved by more than the required 2/3 vote. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to vote. And now we're going to move on to the nominations portion of my presentation. The following members served on the 2020 Nominating Committee. Myself, Mary Beth Bacco, Chair and immediate past National President and member of the Cleveland, Ohio chapter. Beth Barrett, outgoing National Board member and member of the South Bend, Indiana chapter. Lammy Newsham, past National Board member and member of the Summit, New Jersey chapter. Laura Aguirre, past president of the Pasadena, California chapter. Agnes Gregory, president of the Boca Raton, Florida chapter. And Jeanette May, president of the Albany, New York chapter. I would like to thank all of you for your service in selecting the 2020 to 2022 slate of officers and directors for the National Board. We appreciate all your help. The slate of national officers and directors proposed by the nominating committee and approved by the National Board are as follows. President Molly Fanning, Columbus, Ohio chapter. President-elect Angela Schneider, Tucson, Arizona chapter. Immediate past president Carol Pickle, Pasadena, California chapter. Treasurer Catherine Thompson, Atlanta, Georgia chapter. Recording secretary Jane Larson, Toledo, Ohio chapter. The vice presidents Katie Gattner, Detroit, Michigan chapter. Becky Sarney, Pasadena, California chapter. Tricia Boland Jones, Washington, D.C. chapter. Margaret Wayland Strong, Summit, New Jersey chapter. The directors at large, Susan Ferraro Smith, Cleveland, Ohio chapter. Teresa Moeller, Toledo, Ohio chapter. And Chuck Alfano, Western Massachusetts chapter. The slate of officers was presented during a teleconference call on August 19th. Delegates, presidents, and Gavel Club members were instructed that additional nominations could be emailed to Carol Pickle by the end of the day on August 20th. Any additional nominations received would be added to the ballot. Everyone was reminded, however, that at the 2018 annual business meeting, Molly Fanning was elected as president-elect. Therefore, she is now in line to serve as president for the 2020 to 2022 term. And Carol Pickle, the current president, will remain on the board in the position of immediate past president. No additional nominations were proposed. The votes were tallied, and I am so pleased to announce that the 2020 to 2022 slate of officers and directors at large was approved. Congratulations to all of you. Now, please enjoy the installation of this very special group of individuals, the 2020 to 2022 National Christ Child Society Board.
I would like to introduce the 2020-2022 Board of the National Christ Child Society. I am Molly Fanning, Columbus, Ohio, President. Angela Schneider, Tucson, Arizona, President-elect. Catherine Thompson, Atlanta, Georgia, Treasurer. Jane Larson, Toledo, Ohio, Recording Secretary. Carol Pickle, Pasadena, California, Past President. Our Vice Presidents are Katie Gantner, Detroit, Michigan, Becky Sarney, Pasadena, California, Tricia Boland Jones, Washington, D.C., Margaret Whelan Strong, Summit, New Jersey. Our members at large are Susan Ferraro Smith, Cleveland, Ohio, Teresa Moeller, Toledo, Ohio, and Charles Alfano, Western Massachusetts. Our spiritual advisor, Monsignor Ronnie Jenkins, will now lead us in the installation ceremony.
The Christ Child Society was founded over 130 years ago. In every organization, there must be leaders who will help guide the group and ensure the organization continues to have a strong impact on the lives of at-risk children in accordance with our mission. You have been chosen by members of this organization as worthy leaders, capable of carrying out in their name the responsibilities and ideals which they entrust to you and which our society upholds. Your loyalty to this trust will make it possible for the Christ Child Society to strengthen itself and to build on these strengths as it continues to move toward the greater promotion of the mission of Mary Virginia Merrick. This honor implies confidence in your ability and trust in your willingness to assume the responsibilities of directing the society. Among you, a president has been specifically chosen as a leader who will see that the programs and activities planned are carried out. She will, with your cooperation, map the road that you will follow for the coming 2 years. She will, with your individual input and support, strive in every way to make the board of directors an outstanding example of strong, impactful leadership. Recite, Madam President.
I, Molly Fanning, pledge myself to do my utmost to uphold the ideals of the National Christ Child Society, to govern under its bylaws, and to assure my unconditional efforts for the promotion of the society with the cooperation of my fellow officers and members.
The members of the National Christ Child Society have honored you by election to office. This honor implies confidence in your ability and trust in your willingness to assume the responsibilities of directing NCCS to the purpose for which it was founded, governing NCCS in accordance with its bylaws, strengthening and building the organization, and promoting harmony among its members. Your willingness to serve confirms your conviction that the growth and prosperity of our organization shall be beneficial to the welfare of children and to the preservation and encouragement of the mission of the society. Officers and directors at large, please say your pledge to merit that confidence with the help of God.
I pledge myself to be faithful in fulfilling the duties of my office and in furthering the interests of the National Christ Child Society, to seek first and last the honor and glory of God, to observe the regulations and bylaws of the organization, to be loyal to our spiritual advisor and conscientious of my service to society, to maintain the confidence of our board and my fellow Christ Child Society members.
I so pledge.
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 In the name of the membership of the Christ Child Society, I hereby declare you all duly installed officers or directors at large of the National Christ Child Society. To you, the members of the Society, I charge you with the responsibility of sincere and faithful participation in the activities of the Society. Your personal enthusiasm and cooperation with your elected leaders will help determine the strength and growth of NCCS and its chapters. And so we now invoke God's blessing on our directors. O God, you console the faithful by your love. Bestow your love and grace upon these your servants as they go forward to serve the Christ child, in whose name we make this prayer, who lives forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Monsignor Jenkins. I look forward to serving with this talented new board. Now we are going to show you some chapter highlights, and make sure that you stay tuned for a great presentation by Candid at 2:15. You may remember Elizabeth, our presenter from Canvas, that focused on grants and what funders want to know about your organization at last year's conference. This time, she will be giving us practical pointers for fundraising in this current climate.
Molly Fanning, the next national president of Christ Child Society. This is going to be a great time for you in 2021. Our chapter in Columbus will be 40 years old, and you will be a great, great example of the good things we do here, and we hope that you will have every success. I know you will. You've done a great job in Columbus. Congratulations.
She loves the Lord. She's an ambassador of her faith. She wants to carry on the mission of Mary Virginia Merrick. She's a leader that leads by example. She's a person who believes in the mission of the Christ Child Society. She is Molly Fanning, the new president of National Christ Child Society.
Hi, Molly. I just wanted to say congratulations on your presidency for the National Christ Child Society. You have been such a wonderful friend to me, and I appreciate your faith and all of the vision that you have for National Christ Child.
Molly, I can't imagine a better president. You're wonderful to work with. You have the mission of Christ Child in your heart and soul. You're creative and collaborative, and you'll just be a wonderful leader for Christ Child. Congratulations.
Molly Fanning, we are so proud of you, and they are lucky to have you at this organization with your great style of leadership, your warmth, and your personality. It's going to be a great year. Best wishes.
Molly, we wish you the best. We are so thankful to know you. A president that we're sure will be a great one. From all of us at Christ Child Society of Columbus, thank you, Molly. We love you. Love you, Molly. Love you, Molly. Thanks, Molly. Congratulations.
Like windows roll down new city streets and cabs. I feel like anything can happen in life, and you take me right back when we were kids. Never thought I'd feel like this. Like when I close my eyes and don't even care if anyone sees me dancing. Like I can fly and don't even think of touching the ground. Like a heartbeat skip, like an open page, like a one-way trick for an aeroplane. It's the way that I feel when I'm with you. Brand new.
The Christ Child Society of Pasadena, established in 1933 with 15 members, now has well over 400. Even during this pandemic, our mission of helping children still continues. We have a layout program that flourishes with member assembling and distributing over 500 layouts each year that help local hospitals, parishes, Catholic charities, and many other nonprofits. Through our PALS program, members read to children each week in TK3 through kindergarten and tutor children 1st through 3rd grades. Our PALS personal library program gives children TK3 through 3rd grade their own books each year so they can have their own library at home. Manners and etiquette are taught through our Treasures program, where members work with 5th and 6th graders at a local parochial school in an at-risk neighborhood. Our service projects benefit 18 parish schools that receive support for the most needy families. The support covers registration fees, uniforms, supplies, sacramental fees, and other needs of the children. We have a Christmas stocking and Easter shoe program that are funded by our membership through appeal letters sent before Christmas and Easter. We then purchase gift cards for Christmas, $75, and at Easter, $25, that are used for basic needs for the children. All of these programs are made possible by various fundraising efforts by our members. Some of these include our Fall Mass, hosted in a member's beautiful backyard, and donations are made for the National Day of Service. At our Christmas open house that takes place at a member's home, diapers and donations are collected for layettes, all while enjoying a beautiful brunch. We hold an annual gift gathering party to collect donations for our auction. Members and their spouses enjoy a fun evening together with lots of food and libations. Sipping and Shopping is our annual auction and luncheon where members attend with guests for a fun-filled day of shopping, auction, luncheon, and a fashion show. Husbands even help with serving cocktails and serving as the auctioneer. Members look forward to social events, including our Fall Mass and Spring Bunko Nights, Aces and Faces Bridge Lunch, and a Memorial Mass and Luncheon. These wonderful events connect and expand our membership, all while raising money for our programs that continue our mission of helping children.
I'm Karen Marakis, and together with Terry Wortham, we are the co-presidents of Christ Child Atlanta. For the past year, we have worked hard at improving our social media platform. The purpose was to improve name recognition and to promote our mission to the community at large. We have put together a compilation of posts for you, both our Instagram and Facebook, to demonstrate how we promote our events, how we showcase our volunteers, and how we create a positive image for Christ Child. We hope you enjoy this sampling and it inspires you to use social media too. past year, we have worked hard to improve our social media.
Over 30 years ago, Joanne Donnelly, a member of the Detroit chapter of the Christ Child Society, came to Northern Michigan for vacation. And as she spent more time in Northern Michigan, she saw the need of young children especially, and families in this area, and could see that there was a need for a Christ Child Society in Northern Michigan. So she gathered some of her friends. They sat together in a living room and talked about what was needed here, because they all realized that though there was a lot of very positive things happening in the towns along the lake, once you moved away, there was a great deal of need and poverty. So that's how the Christ Child Society of Northern Michigan began.
You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Smeda. I'm the founding president of Christ Child Society of Greater Binghamton. First, on behalf of our board, I would like to thank the National Board of Directors for granting us charter status this year. Some of the projects we've been working on is our layette project. We've partnered with Lourdes Hospital, and they've been handing out layettes to those families who are in need during the pandemic. We were also featured in our local newspaper December 24th of last year, and as a result of our featured article, we have gained membership, and we also received a letter from New York State Senator Fred Akshar congratulating us on a nonprofit within the community helping those in need. We are looking forward to seeing what the future holds for Christ Child Society of Greater Binghamton chapter. We hope everybody is doing well and staying healthy, and we hope to see everybody next year in person, and God bless you all.
Hello, I'm Chuck Alfano with the Western Mass chapter. Since our inception 2 years ago, we have collected over 5,000 books from 2 churches and by word of mouth advertising. We borrowed the library box concept, and we have installed 6 to date, with 6 more ready to go. Because so many organizations in our chapter area are providing the same services that we would like to offer, we have decided to form alliances and offer our services to them. We are now working at a community center that serves 350 children. We offer a reading program and arts and crafts as well. We are providing layettes to foster parents and to another group that has been offering layettes for over 12 years. In the near future, we will have suggestion boxes in churches where individuals can fill out a form for services that we can provide. The Knights of Columbus has donated 40 winter coats to us that we will distribute to the children at the community center in October. And lastly, we have acquired office space where we can now consolidate all of our supplies in one location and have our volunteers at the same location. Thank you, and very best to all of you.
Aloha to all of our fellow members of Christ Child Society. My name is Chance.
And I'm Haley, and together we would like to introduce the Oahu Christ Child Society.
A few years ago, Haley and I were fortunate enough to experience Mary Virginia's great work firsthand with the Tucson chapter. We were inspired by the positive impact being made by very passionate individuals.
Learning all that we have learned, we'd be honored to continue Mary Virginia's mission of helping the underserved children and families within the very communities that we've grown up in here.
We're very thankful to have the opportunity to serve a legacy
and spread the aloha
of Christ Child.
Hi, I'm Bridget Batiste and I work on the JCPenney Commercial Business Partnership team. I'm very excited to have an opportunity to speak with you and share some information about Penny's voucher account program. JCPenney has been partnering with nonprofit and governmental agencies since the early 80s to develop and support a purchase order-based business that allows an organization to send their clients to our stores to shop for items they need. The voucher program allows the issuing entity to have full control over what their clients purchase while eliminating the need for someone to shop with the recipient. By issuing a company-approved purchase order, or as we like to refer to them as vouchers, the organization will be able to send their customers to our stores to shop for approved items with a predetermined value of funds. Once the client has selected the items for approved for purchase, our associates take care of the rest. After completion of the transaction, our store associates will make sure to keep up with all documents and ensure they make it back to your organization for reconciliation purposes. We also have a commercial solution center for all your bulk purchasing needs at bulk prices. We carry many of the items that you use in your layout program, and we have many other bulk pricing options as well. That include coats, winter apparel, shoes, bedding, bulk gift cards. Whatever the need is, we are here to provide the best possible pricing, service, and convenience. Our commercial and business-to-business solution team is here to support you in any way you want to do business. You can place your orders online, by phone, or email. We are dedicated to deliver the best service to everyone. We are honored to be able to partner with nonprofit and governmental agencies and help support their incredible programs that give so much back to our communities. We are rapidly expanding our voucher program as the need for these type of services continues to rise. If you're interested in learning about more of how Pennies can help you support your need to serve your community, please feel free to reach out at 469-536-7045, or you can contact our Commercial Business Solution Center at 800-262-2755. Thank you for your time. Have a great day. Continue to be safe, healthy, and happy.
If you've always cared to reach out to others and you've always believed that every child deserves a dignified life, then you are aware that the needs of your community are many and you want to do more. Get to know us. For over 130 years, we have dedicated our lives to children in communities across the nation. Our volunteers focus on indispensable support for children in need so they can build self-esteem and independence. We are Christ Child Society. We provide newborn baby bundles, necessities and education for new mothers, mentoring, tutoring, and interactive educational and literacy programs. We do this because we believe that when we invest in our children, we invest in our collective future, and it starts with you. Reward yourself with the experience of being part of something bigger. Get to know Christ Child Society today.
I would like to introduce our guest speaker. Back again this year, Elizabeth from Candid. Elizabeth will be talking about effective fundraising planning in times of transition, which we are certainly in.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction, and I am so glad to be here. And I'm glad to be back, actually. Some of you guys I was able to connect with in last year's annual conference here in the greater DC area. So again, I'm Elizabeth Majlesi, and I'm the programs manager for Candid, a 501c3 nonprofit organization ourselves. I'll talk a little bit more about Candid, who we are, what we do, different resources that you can connect with from our organization. But I quickly wanted to say that I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad that I had the chance
to log on a little bit early and see some of the work that you're doing in your different communities showcased. It's always great to see the amazing work that you're doing. I'm already familiar with some of the work that's going on here in the DC area, but it was wonderful to see some of the work going on in your chapters across the US. So I'll be with you for the next hour or so. We've got a short amount of time to cover a lot of information related to the topic of fundraising in the times of transition. Again, it certainly is a time of transition for all of us, for all organizations, and across society in general. Before we really get into the content of this session, I did have just a few housekeeping notes on how to interact with us during this presentation. We will be taking questions. You can drop those in the chat. So if you're looking at your toolbar, for some of you, it might be at the bottom of your screen, or depending on your setup, you may have it along the side of your screen, but you should have a chat function, and you can drop your questions or comments in the chat. And we do have our eye on the chat, and we will be saving time at the end of this presentation to answer some of those questions. So again, I'm Elizabeth Madge-Lessie. You can see my email address there. We'll be sure to drop it into the chat and make sure that you have it so you can follow up with any questions that we don't get to today. So don't hesitate to reach out. That is part of my job as programs manager, is to really connect you to the resources that we have here at Candid, or any other resources that I mentioned in today's call that you think might be helpful and useful to you in your work. I'm also joined today by one of my fellow Candid colleagues, Eliana. Eliana Newworth is also based in the greater DC area. She's actually in Maryland, works out of our Washington, DC office. She's also on the call here with us today. Again, she will be monitoring the chat. She'll be taking some of your comments and questions throughout. You'll see her contact information as well, so feel free to reach out after today's presentation if you have clarifying questions that we don't get to today. So just a little bit about our organization. What is Candid? Who are we? What do we do? How can you connect with us? So Candid is, again, a 501c3 nonprofit organization ourselves. It's a relatively new organization that formed in 2019, so the start of last year, when Foundation Center and GuideStar, two nonprofit organizations, came together, joined forces to become one organization. Foundation Center was around for over 60 years. GuideStar was around for over 20 years. So we do bring quite a lot of experience to the nonprofit sector. So why Candid? Why is Candid important? We're really looking at how nonprofits are connecting with the funding that they use to serve their community. So every year there are millions of nonprofits around the world, or around the US in particular, spending trillions of dollars. Candid is looking at where that money comes from, where it goes, and why that matters, because we do believe that transparency matters. We collect a lot of data on the sector, on the social sector. We produce a lot of research. We foster collaboration between organizations, and we host trainings very similar to the training that you're taking part in today. Our mission at Candid is very simple. It's very broad. Candid gets you the information you need to do good. So we really are connecting people who want to change the world to the resources that they need to do it. I do encourage you to find out more about our organization and stay in touch with us, because there is so much information and resources that you can access through Candid platforms. I'll just speak for myself. Before I came on to Candid, formerly the Foundation Center, as a staff member, I worked for a local community-based nonprofit here in Washington, DC, and used Candid resources all the time, both in my program management work, but also in my development work. So I do encourage you to stay in touch with us beyond today's session. You can follow us on social media. We're at candid.org, and that's spelled out DOT.org. And you can also sign up for our newsletter. And I should mention here, because we will be sharing a lot of links and resources and email addresses throughout today's presentation, that I will circulate a PDF version of the PowerPoint slides. So if you feel like, there's something that comes up on the screen and you don't have a chance to jot it down, or I share a link that you don't have enough time to grab, I will make sure that a PDF version of this is available if you want to revisit the information that we covered together today. And then just very briefly, I do want to mention some of our resources that we've sort of shifted in response to global events. So all of our online learning can be found on Candid Learning, which is our online learning platform. We have lots of recorded trainings, free templates, sample proposals if you're working on proposal writing, sample fundraising plans, sample project budgets. There's a lot of sort of help articles that you can access, free podcasts. I'll talk more about our resources at the end of today's session, but all of that is still available online on candidlearning.org. But we've also curated some of our resources in response to COVID-19, so especially emergency resources and funding that might be available that's specifically related to organizations who are working on COVID-19 relief and support. The same thing for our racial equity resources in response to global events. We're curating some of those resources to make them easier to find. And again, you have those links here on your screen, and I'll circulate this content so you can revisit some of those links as you have time to. So for our time together today, what we'll really be focusing on in this hour together is really that effective fundraising planning when things are not going as previously planned. So we will together today identify common sources of revenue for nonprofits, and I already sort of got a glimpse of some of the work that you're doing to bring in revenue for your chapter. So that's good to see that. You should be able to take stock of organizational strengths and assets. You should be able to evaluate traditional event-based fundraising strategies and develop appropriate alternatives. You should be able to set your fundraising goals, identify potential funding partners, and prepare a fundraising plan. So that's a lot for us to get through together in a short amount of time again, but my hope for our time together today is really to give you some high-level information, some of which you may already be familiar with, but you may be in that sort of planning mode, thinking ahead at 2021 and beyond. And so hopefully this will give you a starting point for some best practices on what to consider as you're planning your fundraising strategies moving forward. So before we get into the content, I do have a quick poll here. And you can answer these in chats if you've been able to locate your chat function on your toolbar. You can just drop your answer into the chat. I'll say your chapter, since I know we're all one organization, chapters. So does your chapter have a fundraising plan? Yes, no, or I'm not sure. It could be that maybe you've been involved with your chapter as a volunteer and you're just now starting to take on fundraising tasks, or you recognize it as a need within your organization, but you haven't done the work yet. So yes, no, or maybe you're not sure.
So far, we have a very mixed bag.
Eliana, what are we seeing?
A very mixed bag so far. I'm glad, though, to see that most of them are either yes or no, so at least people are aware of whether they have a fundraising plan. But hopefully, by using this training, we will have a lot more yeses.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah. So it may be that, again, you're just getting started with the fundraising aspect of your organization, and you're not quite sure if you have a formalized fundraising plan. So we'll start with the working definition of what is a fundraising plan. And this is the working definition that we'll use for today's session. So we'll be referring to a fundraising plan really as a living document that lays out specific fundraising tasks and strategies, and we'll talk about the difference between tasks and strategies, including who will be responsible for completing them and the time frame of when they need to be accomplished. So one key thing I want to point out here in this working definition is that it's a living document. So a fundraising plan, hopefully within your chapter, is not something that's created by your chapter leadership and sort of sits on the virtual desk or bookshelf and is not revisited until the end of the year. Hopefully your fundraising plan really is a living document that you're revisiting on a regular basis. You're making accommodations, you're adjusting for things that come up within your community or within the world, or based on opportunities that come up that you weren't anticipating. So really that piece of it being a living document that everyone within your organization or within your chapter is aware of and knows how they plug into it. So before we get into sort of the steps of creating a fundraising plan, I do want to lay some foundation on some common fundraising sources and strategies, some of which you are already doing because I already saw some of the excellent work that you're doing and bringing in revenue within your chapters. So we'll go through some of these in more detail as we move through the session. But I quickly want to go through these. And again, I see that you're already doing some work in these areas. In our session last year, at last year's conference, we really focused on foundation support, but this is really meant to give more of an overall view of fundraising within the sector. So earned income, which we'll talk about each one of these in more detail. Individual giving, foundation support, corporate contributions, government grant, and then other funding sources like investment income and other ways to bring in sort of additional revenue to your organization. One more quick poll. Does your organization have at least 3 different funding sources? So out of those categories that I just listed, does your chapter have at least 3 different funding sources? So I don't mean 3 different foundation grants or 3 different corporate donors or supporters, but 3 different categories or 3 different sources of funding. And you can just drop your answer in the chat, yes, no, or I'm not sure. We'll give you a couple of seconds.
I would say so far we have majority yes. We have a couple no's and a couple not sure's, but definitely a lot of people with yes. So that's great to hear.
Awesome. Yes, love that. Love that because we definitely recommend bringing in diverse sources of revenue for your organization. So I want to take a moment to look at nonprofit revenue across the sector and just sort of the breakdown of where money tends to come from. So out of all of the revenue coming into the nonprofit sector, you can see that almost 48% is coming from fees for services and goods. So, this is that earned income piece of, charging tuition, charging for services, selling products. You can see that almost 25% is coming from fees for services and goods from government sources. That tends to be more government contracts. Private contributions, just over 13% coming from private contributions. So, we'll look at that section in a little bit more detail, but that would include your foundation grants, that would include your individual giving, et cetera. And remember that this is looking at funding going into the nonprofit sector in general. Government grants at 8%, investment income at 4.8%, and then other income at almost 2%. And that could be, membership dues. It could be more of that, what I would call passive income coming into your organization. So just looking at the purple piece of this pie, so the private contributions, the 13% of funding that comes from private contributions, I want to pull out in a bit more detail what that purple piece of the pie really looks like. So if we expand a bit more information on private contributions by source to nonprofits. And last year, that was almost $450 billion. So again, we're just looking at that purple piece of the pie of private contributions. And we're breaking it down in a bit more detail here on this slide. This information was pulled from Giving USA. If you're not familiar with the Giving USA report, it comes out every year and really looks at funding in the nonprofit sector. This was their 2020 report, which each year's report looks at the previous year. So in 2019, that was almost $450 billion from private contributions. You can see the vast majority of contributions are coming from individuals. So 69%, that's over $3 billion coming from individuals. That's individual donors. 17% coming from foundations, which is, I think, 1 percentage point up from last year. Bequest at 10%, which again, I think is 1 percentage point up from last year, and 5% coming from corporations. And I think it's worth noting that bequest, of course, is a gift that an individual can give at the end of their life. So if you folded in the bequest to the individual giving category, we're at 79% of all private contributions to nonprofits coming from individuals. I think that's really inspiring. I think it is a good indicator of, the power of collective giving. Certainly within that category, there are a lot of major donors, but that also includes, individuals like me and Eliana and, anyone else who wants to support their local, favorite nonprofits. And so I think that's really inspiring and hopefully is part of your fundraising plan. Hopefully you have an individual giving strategy since it is such a big piece of the fundraising pie for nonprofit organizations. There's a lot of opportunity there. So I do, again, want to talk about each of the categories that I mentioned at the beginning of today's presentation. I want to talk about each one in a little bit more detail. So earned income, and again, I saw from some of the videos that you were sharing of the work that your chapters are doing to bring in revenue for your chapters, that many of you are already focused on earned income. So this could be fees for service, this could be membership dues, depending on how your organization is structured. It could be event-based fundraising, depending on how you categorize that. And we'll talk about event-based fundraising in a little bit more detail. In just a little, it could be product sales. I know here in DC, there's the Opportunity Shop that I pass pretty regularly in Georgetown, some beautiful items. I love shopping around in the Opportunity Shop here in DC, and it looks like several of your chapters also have similar programs. So, thinking about how you're bringing in revenue, how you're bringing in income for essentially yourself or for your chapter, for your organization. What is that sort of fee-based programming or product sale that you can offer to bring in additional funding for your organization? Really, Candid is looking at changes and shifts in the sector and the nonprofit sector in general. So we've done a number of surveys ourselves, but we're also looking at surveys that other nonprofits are doing, within their communities and seeing, what anticipated changes many organizations are expecting in years coming up. And one of the areas where organizations are really planning for kind of a hit or maybe a decrease in some of their fundraising is in this area of earned income. Fees for services, if you're charging tuition or you're charging for registration fees for certain programs, or you're selling products. Many organizations, nonprofit organizations, at least looking forward, are planning for sort of a dip in this earned income. And so I think that makes it all the more important to look at your fundraising plan in general. If earned income has been a big piece of your fundraising strategies, and I'll share that for Candid, we're also a nonprofit organization. We have a fundraising plan or a development plan. We're supported by other foundations, and we're supported by earned income in large part. So, we're also planning for potential shifts in earned income. So always a good idea to plan for, your plan A, plan B, and I would say in today's climate, planning for that plan C as well. And anticipating some of those challenges and bringing in earned income and looking at other categories and seeing where you can build up other categories, other streams of income to account for any changes or shifts in traditional earned income. Individual giving, and we'll spend a little bit more time on individual giving because I think there's a lot to this. I think if we had more time together, we could build a whole program just on individual giving or just on any one of these fundraising strategies. But for today's purposes, we're looking at all of these sort of together within your fundraising plan. So individual giving, that includes stewarding your existing donors. And there's a reason why I put that as number one. Cultivating new donors. You can see that I put event-based fundraising on this as well. Again, it sort of depends on what type of event you're hosting and how you're categorizing funds that come in through event-based fundraising. Planned giving. So if you have any sort of legacy society or your chapter is focused on planned giving with some of your longtime donors or donors who feel may want to make a legacy gift to your organization, that would fall under your individual giving. Again, bequests to your organization or to your chapter are coming from individuals. While, you may tease that out into a separate fundraising strategy, in my mind, that also falls under the individual giving category. Whatever you do, whatever approach you're taking to individual giving, just like with any other strategy, it takes strong planning and a high level of engagement with your donors. That's going to be true across the strategies here. So the reason I put stewarding existing donors as number one, I mentioned that was intentional, that I put that as the first strategy here, or the first tip, because it is much, I won't say easier, but it is much more effective to steward your existing donors than to bring in a lot of new donors who are not work, particularly in crisis, particularly in times of transition, when your organization or your chapter may be going through hardships, financial hardships. Your current donors, they already support you. They are already interested in your work. So maintaining those lines of communication and really stewarding your existing donors and looking at, which donors can provide that long-term support, which donors could we maybe elevate to a higher level of giving. And I'll talk more a little bit about that, because I do think that particularly now, reaching out to your individual donors is going to be really key in bringing in additional funds and helping to make it clear to them how they can keep you afloat in times of crisis. So this is actually pulled from the Institute of Philanthropy, which is one of our program partners. And these are just some tips on communication with your existing donors during COVID-19, and then some sort of communications with your current and prospective donors. So for prospective donors, don't say, just times are tough, we really, really need help. Everyone already knows that times are tough. Be really specific about how this pandemic is affecting your organization, your nonprofit, your membership organization, and why are you reaching out to them? So it's not just, these are challenging times. These are challenging times for everyone. So being more specific about the individual struggles that your organization or your chapter or your community is facing is going to be key. And then also including, why you're reaching out to them. People do seek meaning, particularly in times of crisis. So, giving them that opportunity to connect with you and donate and make a difference, and being clear about, what supporting your organization could mean, not just for your organization, but for the community in which they're a part. And then for your current donors, for your existing donors, check in with them, ask how the donor is doing, listen to their, needs, listen to their responses, listen to how they're doing. Every touch point with a donor is not an ask. So, just being in touch, asking how they're doing, what's going on at your organization that they would be interested in. Really keep those lines of communication open. And then, if you do have some struggles, some financial struggles, or you're anticipating some very specific challenges within your chapter or within your community, be as transparent as possible. What those challenges are. And if you are in a position to make an ask, be specific about your ask. And then, of course, always the gratitude piece is going to close that loop. So, I'm sure that this is not an issue with your chapters, but, one of the worst things to do is, secure a gift from a donor and not follow up. So I think that's probably the 101 with individual donors is express gratitude on an ongoing basis. And then the follow through piece beyond just the thank you and the gratitude is really letting them know the impact of their gift. I think we all want to know, what our dollars are doing within the organizations that we support. So things to keep in mind as you're reaching out to your existing donors and prospective donors. So just a little bit more on this, again, really connecting with your donors. Are they overworked? Are they lonely? Are they uncertain? Are they wishing they could do something a little bit more? And not just listening and hearing kind of where they are, but offering those solutions. So, it may not be always supporting your organization. It could be that you're connecting them with other resources and you're connecting with them with other interesting topics and issues and information that would be of use to them. There's sort of this idea of being of service to your donors that I think is really important, especially if you're looking at, relationships with your donors as really that, as a long-term relationship. And then, what are those things that donors can do and be of service beyond just funding? So are you offering virtual volunteer opportunities? I saw in some of your videos that some of your shops are already open again. So presumably you're already using in-person volunteering opportunities, but are there other things that folks can do that maybe are not in person that, would still be beneficial to your organization, particularly related to fundraising? So can they make calls on your behalf? Can they act as a steward to other donors within your organization? So thinking, tangible sort of action items that donors can do or supporters can do beyond just their contribution. And then can donors provide in-kind support? Never discount in-kind support, and I'll talk a little bit more about in-kind support a little bit later, but do you have professionals within your community who can donate their professional services, graphic designers, tech folks who may help you host a virtual event? And I'll talk about virtual events here in just a moment, which is great because we're in the middle of one right now. So it's sort of a meta experience. But, whatever type of support your donors are able to provide, definitely continue that piece of gratitude. And really be specific as possible in letting them know how they are supporting and making a real difference. I just quickly, again, wanted to show this graphic also from Institute of Philanthropy, again, one of our program partners, on how to expand your circles of influence. Something that I think is a very real challenge in individual giving is that, we have our network of donors, we have our network of supporters, and donor fatigue is a very real thing. So we don't want to make the same ask over and over. We don't want to sort of burn out our donors, particularly now when our donors are stretched and there are a lot of issues to support in a lot of different ways right now. And so, expanding your circle of influence to see what additional donors you can bring into your circle, I think is really important right now. So consider these different categories, your personal life, colleagues at work, different businesses in the area. I saw already in the intro videos that you have established some connections with companies and businesses that want to connect and support your organization. So, how can you expand upon that? And then other friends in leadership positions, how can they maybe, beyond just supporting you, how can they maybe connect you to a larger audience? I think that's the goal on individual giving is building up your network, expanding your circle of influence as much as possible. And it is a process, and it does take time, and I do want to be clear about that. So I'll spend a little bit of time on virtual events, virtual fundraising events as it relates to individual giving, because I do think that, different organizations categorize event-based fundraising a little bit differently. But if you're accustomed to fundraising events and really bring in a large part of your individual gifts from a fundraising event. And traditionally that has been in considering shifting to a virtual platform, always start with the why. Why were you hosting that event in the first place? What was the real purpose? To what end were you hosting this event? Is it, very specifically related to your mission? Does that event act as a sort of a service mechanism to your mission? Or is it more of, traditionally, has it been more of a way to get people together and exposure to your organization and sort of educate attendees about the work that you're doing? Is it actually to bring in funds? Are you selling tickets or products or services at the event that bring in additional funding for your organization? So always start with the why, and I think that will help you determine if it is something that you want to switch to a virtual platform, or is there something else that you can do in place of that event that has typically been an event-based fundraiser for you. As everyone on this call, all of the panelists on this call know, and all of the organizers of this event know, that it definitely requires a strong plan and a strong timeline. So, if you're thinking that you're going to flip your annual fundraiser to a virtual platform in just a few weeks and you haven't really started the planning process, it can be really challenging. So having that strong plan, having a set timeline. There are some advantages to virtual events and some advantages that we've seen in virtual events that we've hosted. They tend to have lower expenses, so you're not dealing with catering, you're not dealing with space rentals. So for attendees, you're not dealing with travel costs. And again, we're kind of talking about this in the middle of a virtual event. So a lot of this, and are experiencing right now. So there is, related to fundraising events, there is potential for higher return on investment. So you're not spending as much to sort of produce the event typically, but you may still have that chance to bring in additional funds. Consider the disadvantages where a lot of us are online all the time now. And so are some of your donors having screen time burnout? Are they seeking out, something outside of sort of an online platform? Will your event be honoree-centric, donor-centric, community-centric? So what is sort of the focal point of your event, of your fundraising event? Again, think about who's your intended audience, how will you reach them? And again, going back to the why. Why are you hosting this event in the first place? What is sort of the key goal or goals? Just a few more strategies for successful virtual events. Of course, you'll want to plan for what success means for you and your chapter. What does that look like? How much money? How many people? Like any other event, word of mouth is a really big factor. So how are you getting the word out about your event? Again, I would say particularly now when I think all of our inboxes are sort of flooded with virtual conferences and virtual events, communications. And so how are you going to cut through that? How are you going to cut through that noise? Are you focusing on various levels of donors? And this is, in my opinion, really an opportunity area. If you're selling tickets to this event, do you have low-cost options to bring in higher numbers of smaller donations? Again, as I started to talk about individual donors or individual giving, stewarding your donors and kind of moving them up the level of giving is really effective. And so, maybe you're bringing in a donor at a lower level. Maybe they're only giving $20 a month or $50 a month. They're making a one-time $100 donation, but can you keep them in your circle and move them up that giving scale? So don't discount your smaller donors. And I think virtual fundraising events are a great way to really catch the attention of some of those smaller donors who will not be small donors forever, or really have that opportunity to move up the scale. Always try to move from transactional donations to meaningful relationships with donors. Again, if you are more focused on sort of transactional donations, a lot of times it's a one-time gift. So are you positioning yourself through a virtual fundraising event to maintain meaningful connections with folks who make a donation to your organization, rather than having it be, a one-time sort of like purchase? Is it an entry point for a longer relationship with the donor? More things to consider here. The right platform is key. We're using Zoom. I think Zoom is certainly increasing in popularity, and I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with the platform. But what is the right platform for the type of event that you're hosting? Consider a mix of live and pre-recorded elements. Again, we're in a perfect example of that, an event that is doing that really well, blending those pre-recorded sessions with live sessions. It's often helpful to have an orientation to the platform, just so participants are comfortable with, how the system works and how they can participate before, during, and after the event. We have heard about organizations. We do a lot of trainings with a lot of organizations, and so we hear from organizations on the ground kind of what they're doing for their virtual fundraising events, and we've heard some really great examples of fun things that organizations are doing to make it, a more interactive event, but also, having something tangible like sending, swag boxes to be delivered before the event, so participants can use some of those items during the session. So anyway, just some things to consider as you're planning for virtual events, but always going back to that why piece. So why are you hosting the event? If there's a way you can sort of get at your goals without hosting a virtual fundraising event, does it make sense for you to transition to something else? But looking at, the aftermath, once you hosted your event, were you successful? What are you going to do next beyond just that live event? Would you host it again? All of that's going to fit into your fundraising plan moving forward. Would you consider hosting it again? Was it a success, or maybe do you need to transition? And then always considering what other sources of funding are a good option for you. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, and are talking about today, diversifying your sources of funding. So other sources of funding to consider beyond individual giving and earned income. I want to talk briefly about foundation support, and I know that last year we focused mostly on foundation support and prospecting for potential foundation grants, and actually drafting proposals and connecting with foundations. I want to talk about sort of different types of foundation support. So, of course, the first type being private foundations. Private foundations are typically going to be your family foundations, both the large family foundations that we all have heard the names of, the Kellogg Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, the Gates Foundation, those big names, but also your regional funders and smaller family foundations. Private foundations can give grant support in a couple of different ways: general operating versus project support. And I think it is important to understand the difference between general operating support from private foundations and project support. General operating grants tend to be more flexible in how you can spend those funds. So if that's the type of support you're looking for, then that's the type of support you should apply for and really look for when you're prospecting. Project support tends to be a little bit more restricted and is tagged for a particular project or program that you're pitching to the foundation in your proposal. So be considerate of that as you're looking for foundation support. What type of support are you asking for? Is this a general operating or gen op grant, or is this a project grant, a grant for a particular project? Contributions from grant-making public charities. I want to talk a little bit about that. Grant-making public charities are grant-making institutions that typically are set up as 501c3 nonprofit organizations, but are making grants back to either a particular region or geographic area, or back to a particular population group, or around a particular issue. So a lot of your community foundations are going to be set up as grant-making public charities. They may have individuals who are contributing to them. They may be receiving funds from, investment income, and then they're re-granting funds back to either a particular community or around a particular issue. And then there's also foundation support in the form of support from corporate foundations. So we talked about corporations accounting for 5% of that overall private contributions to nonprofit organizations. Corporations can give in a few different ways, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in just a minute. But one of the ways that corporations can give is through their corporate foundation. Corporate foundations or company-sponsored foundations are separate legal entities, and they typically have grant cycles and grant applications that are kind of separate from the giving that comes directly from the company. And that's usually run through marketing and PR departments. So particularly for foundation support or grant support from private foundations or company-sponsored foundations, we usually recommend allowing at least 6 to 8 months, I would even say a year, of time to allow for those sources of funding to come through. So it is a process that takes time. I always recommend using one of Candid's tools, Foundation Directory Online, as a prospecting tool, which I can share more about that, after the Q&A, if anyone is interested in how to prospect with Foundation Directory Online. But really, it is a process. I would like to say that now we're seeing foundations being a little bit more flexible and really kind of speeding up this timeline. And I think that is a great thing for foundations to do and support during times of crisis. But as you're planning, which the focus of this is really on fundraising planning, I always recommend sort of over planning on the timeline. So allowing that 6 to 8 months to really see the dollars come through. Corporate support, I'll just speak to this very quickly. Corporate support can be really helpful in event sponsorships. And I would say actually, if you're considering hosting a virtual event, I would say corporate support is even more of a prospect now because we tend to see larger audiences in our virtual events, for all of the reasons that I mentioned before of, it's easier to get there, that geography barrier is not there. It's most of the time less of a time commitment. So, there may be this extra incentive for corporations and businesses to sponsor your virtual events because you have a larger audience. And as we all know, a lot of corporate support is interested in that brand or name recognition. Are there opportunities within the programs that you're offering for a corporation or a local business to sponsor a program? And I would say that type of relationship or that type of partnership is actually, a longer term relationship or longer term partnership rather than, like a one-time sponsorship for a specific event. So if you're looking for corporations to sponsor a particular program, look for those connections, those sort of common connections, those shared audiences. It may be an obvious connection. It may not be an obvious connection. I'll just share quickly that the last organization that I worked for was an English language school, a nonprofit English language school, community-based program. We worked with adult students from over 90 different countries. So most of our services were focused on language instruction. We had an opportunity to partner with Kaiser Permanente, which is a health organization. And at first, it did not seem like a logical partnership. But when we really started looking at our classes and our curriculum, every level of English or every class that we offered had a health unit. And, it became apparent that there were more connections beyond, just at first glance. Level of your language acquisition is directly related to your health status, and in that it affects things like how comfortable you are in seeking out healthcare, and how sort of capable you are to sort of understand medical language and instructions from doctors, et cetera, et cetera. That's an example of when the connection or the partnership wasn't obvious at first first glance, but digging into it a little bit more and teasing out those similarities can be really helpful in maintaining those longer term partnerships. Cause-related marketing opportunities, a good example of this is like, before when we were going out to restaurants and partnering with local restaurants to sort of, have a night where you're bringing in a lot of your donors to the restaurant and a percentage of the proceeds would go back to your organization. So you're promoting the business and you're bringing in additional revenue for the business and you're receiving a portion of that. In-kind donations we already sort of talked about, but particularly for companies, working with volunteers, employees at a particular organization and bringing them in as volunteers for your organization is helpful not only for the volunteer work that they're able to do for you, but also in increasing awareness about your organization and the work that you do, and potentially turning those volunteers later into prospective donors. And then employee matching programs. I think if you haven't done any sort of corporate support or run any sort of corporate giving programs within your organization, employee matching programs is a good way to start with your current existing donors. If you're thinking about communications to your donors, that to me is a really good way to kind of tap into corporate dollars, is asking your current donors, do their employers have an employee matching program so that their gift can go even further? I think that's a really great way to kind of tap into those corporate dollars without making a hard ask to your donors, especially if they've received multiple communications from you and you've made multiple asks in recent times. Flipping your ask, changing your ask, not asking them to make another direct contribution, but just asking if their employer has an employee matching program. Anytime before you approach a corporation, think about your overall reach and any potential shared audiences. A lot of times, nonprofit organizations have a larger reach than they initially think. So it's not just how many people come to your event or, how many volunteers you have or how many people do you serve, but it's, everyone who's on your mailing list, everyone who's on your email or newsletter sign up, your website, do you have a high traffic website? All of those numbers factor into your reach. So you may not know them off the top of your head, but looking at those numbers and being knowledgeable about your reach and shared audiences before approaching a corporation is important. Government grants. So, I would just in general say that if you're looking into government grants, start small and then move up. So looking at your local government, so city government, maybe your mayor's office has a number of grant opportunities, or even your county. What type of support can you get locally before you start looking at some of these larger government agencies? So start local, move on to state. Potentially you're in a position of applying for federal funds. Just know the larger the government entity, the more sort of bureaucracy or paperwork or, more capacity you may need to have on your end to maintain those reports, to fill out those applications, et cetera. And then also keeping in mind that there are many more government grants available for emergency funds right now. So again, start local and build up from there. Another quick poll, and I do have my eye on the time, so we'll kind of move through quickly on the last piece of this, but one more quick poll. So thinking about your fundraising strategy currently, what fundraising strategy is your chapter most focused on during this COVID-19 era, which surprisingly, I think we're already kind of 6 months in. If we're thinking about things shifting back in March. So what type of fundraising strategy is your chapter most focused on? Foundation grants, corporate support, government grants, individual donors? Hopefully you have a blend here, but what is sort of your main focus? And Eliana, what are we seeing in the chat?
So far, we mostly have individual donors. We have a couple people saying foundation grants, many more individual donors.
Mm-hmm.
One saying corporate support, which is interesting. Okay. And then let's see. One person says they do a challenge match drive. That sounds interesting also.
Great. Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot of you are really focused on individual donors. And again, I think that right now is a time when your existing individual donors can really step up to a higher level. And people are interested in helping out in their communities. I'm thinking even, myself and how, I'm looking at other organizations that I can support during this time. So that's great to know that you're focused on individual giving. And again, I would say that, foundation grants, we are seeing a trend within private foundations to be more flexible right now and issuing more emergency funds and also being a little bit more lax on applications and trying to shorten that timeline of a grant cycle. So it's all about creating stability. That's what, looking at these different streams of income is all about. That's what really putting together your fundraising plan is all about. So, we always recommend at least 3 streams of income, so 3 different categories of funding, and that can look different for every organization and should look different for every organization. What I want to really reinforce here is that every stream of income may not be the right fit for your chapter. And so it really is about figuring out which streams make sense for your organization to manage and creating that stability by having multiple sources of funding. And I would take it even a step further than just having at least 3 categories of funding. You want that diversity within each category as well. So, not just having 3 different sources of funding, but also within, let's say, foundation grants, having multiple foundation grants so that you're not overly reliant on one particular foundation. Same thing for your individual donors. The more donors you can have within that category, the better. And really, again, making sure that type of revenue, that type of income makes sense for your organization. And I'll share very quickly that, my last organization, about a quarter of our budget was coming through from government grants. And after a number of years, our government grants were becoming a little bit too restrictive for the type of work that we were hoping to do. And so we really had to make a strategic shift in our fundraising plan and say, okay, if we're not incorporating as much government funding, what other streams are we going to build up to account for that, loss or that decrease in government funding? So it's all about finding the funding stream that creates stability and makes sense for your organization. 3 really quick questions to keep in mind. Which funders provide the most long-term security? What additional streams can you maybe bring into your fundraising mix for the upcoming year? How much time and money will it take to secure additional fundraising or funding partners? It's all about balance. And so, if you are spending more time and money than a particular funding opportunity is worth, then, consider that as you're building your plan. So very quickly, going through our steps for creating a fundraising plan. And again, for today, we really are looking at this at the high level in the hopes that you'll take this back to your chapter and really dig into it and sort of do the work of creating your plan with your team, with your colleagues within your chapter. So identify your assets, develop a case statement, and we'll go through each one of these. Set your goals, know what you're really striving for, create an action plan, actually implement that plan. So it's not enough to just create the plan, but really implement it, and then always evaluate it. So I'm going to go through each one of these really quickly. As you're looking at your organizational strengths, think what makes you unique. There are over 2.5 million nonprofit organizations in the U.S. And so what makes you unique? What makes you stand out? What are your strengths that you're going to actually talk about when you're talking to donors or incorporate into your marketing materials? So maybe you have a really compelling mission. I know from your videos that you do, and just from knowing about your organization in general, that you do. Do you, within your chapter, have a large public base of support? Maybe you have name recognition, especially being a national nonprofit, as member organizations or as member chapters, you have, that name recognition of your national chapter. Maybe you have a well-connected staff and board, or your your leaders, staff leaders, board leaders? Are they connected to other folks who might be able to support your organization? We talked about expanding your circles of influence. So use those connections to expand your circle of influence. Maybe you have a great facility. Maybe you have a high traffic website. It's different for every chapter. It's different for every organization, but what are your strengths that you really want to highlight? And I'll move through the rest of these pretty quickly, but again, we've got time for questions, and I'm happy to follow up after today's presentation. We recommend using a SWOT analysis to really look at your organizational strengths. So strengths, weaknesses, your opportunities and threats. I don't like using that word threat. It sounds kind of scary, but what are those challenges that you can anticipate on the horizon? We're all kind of dealing with those right now. But how can we really plan for additional, challenges that we might see are on the horizon? When you're developing your case statement, really you're pulling together language that you'll use in all of your fundraising materials. So in your grant proposals and in speaking engagements, you'll include in this case statement, and it might be just like a page that all fundraisers within your organization are using when they're talking about your mission and values, your programs and services, your accomplishments, your plans for the future, your budgeting needs. Your case statement is really pulling together, let's say, that one pager that's going to drive all of your other fundraising materials. And it could drive your marketing materials. It could drive, speeches that you're giving in different communities. But pulling together that language is going to be really important. Set your goals. Start where you are. If you don't know where you are, it's really hard to plan for the future. So look at who are your current funding partners, who are your largest funders, where could you really strengthen that base. So if you are new to fundraising within your chapter, and you're working on setting goals for the future, make sure you know where you're starting. Make sure that you kind of understand the fundraising that your organization is currently doing. Create your action plan. So really set those strategies. What strategies will you use to really reach those goals? Set a goal for each revenue strategy. So for foundation grants, what is your goal for the upcoming year? For individual giving, starting from where you are, what is your goal for the next year? And really have a strategy for getting there. Create a chart, a timetable, or a narrative description, really outlining the details. The more detail you can put in your fundraising plan, really the better. Because it's really meant to keep you on track, to keep you focused, to keep everyone on the same page. As you're implementing your plan, check in regularly to make sure that you're on track. What does regularly mean? It depends on who you are and what you're doing within the organization. If fundraising is your primary task, maybe you're checking in on this every single day. If you're helping out in a committee capacity and you're helping out with certain events or certain pushes, then maybe it's, regularly means monthly or quarterly. So depending on your role within the organization, it might look different. But the key is making sure that there are regular eyes on this. And going back to the beginning of today's session and thinking about a fundraising plan as a living document, it's important that there are eyes on this document and there are eyes on the plan, and you're evaluating your plan. And that's kind of the sixth step here, evaluating your plan to see what worked, what didn't work. What are you going to continue in the future, and what, maybe do you need to change? Was the money that you raised worth the time and effort spent? And again, it's all about a balance of, your time, your energy, the efforts that you're putting in, and the money that you're spending in some cases to raise additional funds. So the evaluation piece, don't discount the evaluation piece of your fundraising plan. Really looking at it, seeing what worked, what didn't, what you want to keep, what you want to change. So some key takeaways, and then we're going to move into some Q&A. So definitely know where you're starting. Those of you, again, who aren't quite sure if you have a fundraising plan, ask those questions. See where are the major funding streams coming in from now, and where can you grow certain streams. Always diversifying your streams as much as possible. It's all about creating stability within your organization and not being overly reliant on one stream. Set realistic goals. So if you've never received any corporate support and you're just starting out with connecting with local businesses or tapping into some corporate dollars, set a modest goal for the first year that you're running a certain type of campaign. See how you do in that first year, and then adjust those goals for the next year. Always better to exceed your goals. When you're in the planning process, set those goals modestly. Better to exceed them and change your goals, moving forward. So you really want to be realistic. Evaluate your plan. I already mentioned, and revise it as needed. That's so important. Again, it shouldn't be a plan that you draft with your leadership and it just sits, on the virtual shelf until year end. So I would encourage you when you're going back to your chapter to really use an exercise to assess your organization's fundraising strategy. So really conduct that SWOT analysis, see where your strengths and weaknesses, your opportunities and threats are, and really, work together as a team to draft this plan. Always more effective when you have more players involved, team players involved, when you have more hands on deck. So I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions from the group that we can address here together today. And as I mentioned, anything we don't get to today, we certainly will be available for follow-up questions, and we'll send out all of this content because I know we went through it very quickly in a short amount of time. So anything that came through on chat or anything to address in these last few minutes together?
This question is it considered appropriate to contact donors right now when there's so much going on in the world and donors are likely dealing with a lot of personal stresses as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a question we get quite often. And it's a very real question to consider as you're thinking about approaching your donors. I would say that it certainly is important and appropriate to stay in communication with your donors. Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, they're your supporters. They already know the work that you do. They already know that it's important work. They already have a relationship with you. And so even though your donors are likely going through a lot of sort of personal things right now, especially school or virtual school and dealing with all of that, or transitions within their own workplace. There is a lot going on in the world and society in general, but I think all the more reason to stay in communication with your donors, to check in on them, to see how they're doing, to maintain those lines of open communication. Remember that every touch point with the donor is not an ask for funding. It's not, asking for monetary support. Sometimes it's just checking in with them to see how they're doing, and really building that relationship up and stewarding them as donors in the future. It also could be that, your donors may not be giving to you right now, because maybe they have other financial pressures right now, but that doesn't mean they're not going to come back to you as a donor in the future. So is it appropriate? Absolutely. Your job as a fundraiser and building up the relationship, as that relationship is to understand and get a feel for when is the right time to just check in and when is the right time to make an ask. And so that's part of the process is being able to determine what's most appropriate.
Great. Okay. So next question we have is, how do you create a fundraising plan with so many unknown circumstances?
Yeah, that's a good one too. I mean, that is, going back to the having a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. Absolutely. As you're building out this plan, your fundraising plan for 2021, none of us really know exactly what things will look like moving forward. There's a lot going on in our communities and society and the world at large. And so, not knowing when we'll be able to transition back to an in-person setting, and sort of when is that safe for what circumstances or what situations. That still a lot of question marks around that. So, what I would recommend, not just in your fundraising plan, but in your grant proposals to foundations, in your communications to donors, presenting those different scenarios, those different sort of, plans. Plan A, your backup plan is Plan B, and then having, a third more flexible plan is really going to be important, because there are so many variables that we don't have sort of a definite answer that we know we're going to be able to accomplish X, Y, and Z by X, Y, and Z date. I guess a general tip I would have on creating your fundraising plan, just based on what other organizations are experiencing. I think I mentioned at the beginning when I was talking about Candid, we're surveying and collecting data from other nonprofit organizations. And one of the things that we are most sort of tuned into is where nonprofits are seeing a dip or a drop in revenue or in funding. And we're hearing over and over that organizations are preparing for and expecting a dip in earned income. So, if you see that is a trend across the sector, then it may make sense for you to sort of plan for that and potentially tap into some other funding sources. I would say in particular foundation grants, since we know, again, a sector trend is really that many private foundations are being a bit more flexible, at least right now, in their funding opportunities.
All right, next question we have is if you could talk a little bit more about case statements. We did have a slide on that, but maybe some more advice that's on that slide.
Yeah, absolutely. So your case statement really, as you're drafting your case statement, and I'm going to call it a 1-pager, but it may vary in length. It may be a 5-pager. It may be a 10-pager based on, how much detail you're going into, but I'll call it a 1-pager. It is, your mission, your vision, your values, but it's also a quick summary of the work that you're doing, and really is that language that you're drafting to get everyone within your organization on the same page. You're not creating a case statement just to create a case statement for your fundraising plan. That really is the base language, or that sort of boilerplate language, or that template language that you can then use for, again, proposals, speaking engagements, marketing material. It's that summary of who you are, what work do you do, why do you do that work. And so, again, I see it as a feeder into materials that you're preparing, other fundraising materials that you're preparing for your organization. Again, I'm calling it a 1-pager. I would love for a case statement to be a 1-pager. I've certainly had some that are 5 pages. So it's not about the word limit. It's not about the length of it, but it's really about the content of putting down on paper or virtual paper, who your organization is, what you do, why you do it, how you do it, and sort of standardizing that language so that you're getting everyone within your organization, particularly those who have an external facing role or who might be doing fundraising, on the same page using the same language. So you're just creating sort of a united front. Hopefully that's helpful. And again, we'll circulate a PDF of this so you can revisit that slide on case statements. Other questions that may have come in on the chat, I will save just a minute to wrap us up, but anything else pressing that has come in on chat?
I think we're good.
Okay, perfect. So I do want to make sure that you know how to stay in touch with us and how to follow up. So you should have mine and Eliana's email address. So please feel free to reach out to us. Part of our work is being available to connect you to some of the resources that we have at Candid. Again, I can personally testify on Candid's resource and how useful they are, especially for small nonprofit organizations. So do stay in touch with us. I mentioned this briefly, but things like our prospecting database for grant opportunities, Foundation Directory Online. We have a free ebook collection. We have sample materials, so sample budgets, sample proposals. We have something called the Knowledge Base, which is a series of FAQs or articles built around FAQs. All of that can be found on learning.candid.org. And do stay in touch with us on social media. If you are on social media, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's probably where you can find the most real-time updates on the organization. So I'm going to stop there because I think I'm just right out of time, but please don't hesitate to reach out. And it was a pleasure to connect with you guys again today and learn more about your work. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your conference. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for being with us once again. If anyone has any questions or would like additional information, please contact the office. We have 3 newly chartered chapters that we would like to officially recognize at this time. Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, Greater Binghamton, New York, and Western Massachusetts. We are proud of all the work to get your chapters up and running and look forward to watching you grow. This year, we decided to give out 2 membership growth awards depending on size of chapter. The chapter with under 150 members with the largest percentage growth over the past 2 years is Monterey Bay, with a 44% increase. The chapter with over 150 members with the largest percentage growth over the past 2 years is Columbus, with an 8% increase. Congratulations to Monterey Bay and Columbus. Please share your secret with the rest of us. Beth Barrett, our current programs chair, will now announce the winner of the 2020 Red Wagon Award.
The Red Wagon Award is presented biennially by National to a chapter that has developed or maintained a program of exceptional quality. To be considered, programs must be child-centered and positively impact the education or well-being of the children served. All chapters are eligible to apply for the award, with the exception of the previous 2 winners. In addition to recognition, the chapter will receive $1,000. The grant's purpose is to provide funds for tangible items that benefit the children or the well-being of infants and children. 5 outstanding applications were submitted for the 2020 Red Wagon Grant. First, Cleveland's Community Needs Assessment determined both the short and long-term needs of children in Greater Cleveland in order to evaluate their programs. Columbus's Christ Child Early Learning Center Scholarship and Enrichment Program started with a library reading program and expanded to provide learning enrichment activities, a music program, and parental involvement. Omaha's scholarship program has provided renewable $5,000 collegiate scholarships for 5 years. This year, they added scholarships for short-term educational programs that lead to certifications, with the goal of getting families on the road to independence and stability. Phoenix's Book Buddies program aims to improve reading, writing, and small group communication skills. They have mentored 4th and 5th grade students at St. Matthew Elementary for the past 15 years, expanding to include interactive activities and provide chapter books. South Bend's Success Program began in 2006 as a tutoring program at Inner City St. Adelbert School. The program has been greatly enhanced to include library staffing, small skills group activities, and much more. After thoughtful consideration, the grant has been awarded to South Bend's Success Program. The Success Coordinators have worked closely with their partner school to develop strategic approaches to working with a predominantly Latino population in order to close learning gaps. Last year, they established a 4-component approach to maximally impact the education of 200 students and their families. First, by responding to individual needs through tutoring, then setting long-range goals through a college campus experience. Third, through direct support activities that empower students with goal setting and confidence building. And finally, through indirect support activities, funding, planning, and supporting field trips and experiential learning. The chapter plans to use the grant for books, math or reading materials for student literacy events, admission fees for cultural events, and parent education on how to work with their children at home. To accept the award, please welcome and congratulate Co-President Monique DeGuara and Jean Fiermeyer, who has led the redesign of the program and is a major reason why it has expanded and flourished. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, National. We are so grateful for your support of our Success program. We are proud of this program and of the volunteers who administer it. Again, thank you very much. You're going to allow us to continue in our ministry.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, South Bend. You are an inspiration to us all. Now we move to a very special award, which is the highest achievement for a Christ Child member or supporter. Mary Beth Bacco, please take it away.
So Ann, look around at all the people on this call. Do you recognize some different faces that shouldn't be on our expansion call? Well, it's a surprise for you because I have the pleasure of presenting the 2020 Mary Virginia Merrick Award. The Mary Virginia Merrick Award is given to an individual or organization in recognition of extraordinary service or support to the National Christ Child Society. Nominations were solicited from Gavel Club members, past and present National Board members, and sitting chapter presidents. The nominees had to meet one or more of the following criteria: had a long-standing impact on NCCS and its chapters, served in some capacity on the national level, and dedicated multiple years and significant hours of service to NCCS, demonstrated a continued commitment to a local chapter, and/or contributed to the cause of canonization. The Mary Virginia Merrick Award Committee consisted of myself, Mary Beth Bacco, immediate past national president and member of the Cleveland, Ohio chapter as chair, Patty Myler, past national president and member of the Washington, D.C. chapter, Loretta Haw, current NCCS board recording secretary and member of the Sarasota, Florida and Akron, Ohio chapters, Ellen O'Brien, past national board member and member of Pittsburgh, PA chapter, and Mary Jo Dawson, past national board member and member of our Detroit, Michigan chapter. Our committee was unanimous in our selection of Ann Kelly for the 2020 Mary Virginia Merrick Award. Ann Kelly has held several national board positions, including Director at Large, President-elect, President, and immediate past president for the total of 10 years on the national board. She's a member of the Pasadena chapter since 1999, and she started the Monterey Bay chapter in 2016, where she still remains the president today. Ann has never said no when asked to do something for national or her local chapter. She has always given freely of her time and her many talents, from her legal expertise to her passion about Mary Virginia Merrick and the Christ Child Society to her beautiful singing voice. I had the wonderful pleasure to work with Ann as her president-elect. I learned so much from her and will forever value my time working with her. She was a great help as we developed our 2017 to 2021 strategic plan, calling about her past experience leading the 2007 Long Range Planning Committee. She was instrumental in the development of the Brand Values Matrix, which is an important communication tool still widely used today. She played an instrumental role in the design and information gathering of 2 different national website revisions. She has served on the Canonization Advisory Committee for many years, and she got the Mary Virginia Merrick Wikipedia page up and running. It was thanks to Ann's philanthropic endeavors that a $100,000 grant was obtained for the cause for canonization. She herself has also been a generous contributor to both NCCS and the cause. She even personally commissioned and financed the beautiful painting of Mary Virginia Merrick that hangs in our national office. Ann served on the search committee for the last 2 national executive directors, using her business and legal expertise to bring National Christ Child Society to a new level of professionalism. She also used the same expertise as she presented seminars at various national conferences and conventions. Our committee cannot think of anyone who has done more to advance both the National Christ Child Society and the cause for canonization effort than Ann Kelly. Our heartfelt love and thanks go to you, Ann, as we present you with the 2020 Mary Virginia Merrick Award.
All right.
Yay!
You guys would like to say something?
Yeah. First of all, I've not always been easy to work with, but I have been devoted. I am absolutely shocked, as you can probably tell. I just am trying to support this organization and live the grace and vision of our founder. It's been such a privilege it's a privilege to sit here with Roseanne Anderson, who brought me into this. Correct. That's how I really became involved, and to share such wonderful experiences and work with all of you, and to know that we are an organization that continues to be poised thanks to the good work of so many in recent years, and beyond my tenure on any board or involvement in any major way, we're in a great place to move forward. It is something that I was singing this morning, trying to sing a song for my church, which we're, like a lot of choirs, probably doing these melded things where you sing your part and then they mix it up with everybody else. And when I was looking for inspiration, the words to the song was a Latin song, but it was about singing joyfully to the Lord. And I thought, well, what is my life? What am I singing? And I said, well, I'm not always doing enough for Christ Child. I should be singing more Christ Child. And that was what I thought this morning about an hour ago. And I just have to say that because of Mary Virginia Merrick's, example, and because of the profound need in this country and world for people to care, and because of this pandemic, which provides us with even, kind of in weird ways, closer up and more attenuated examples of severe hardship, especially for children. I would just say thank you for this honor, but I think that my revelation an hour ago was the more important one. There's so much more to be done. We all have such a huge opportunity and responsibility, and I am so humbled to be in the company of previous award winners. I don't even know, obviously, how to say anything about that. I'm so grateful. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Well deserved.
And Rex, I have witnessed your dedication day and night to the Christ Child Society. And it's just evident how much you think about the organization, how much you actually care. And I look at all the other board members who are surrounding you here today, and really you guys are all doing such a great job, and it means so much to everybody. And I just I think it's marvelous.
Congratulations, Ann. You continue to exemplify the spirit, generosity, and everything that makes this organization so special to us all. Yes, Mary Virginia Merrick is smiling right now. Now, most Christ Child members will probably never step foot in our offices in Rockville, Maryland. Although please note, you're always welcome to come by at any time. Our executive director, Maura Lynch, along with Karen Bartlett and Kristen O'Donnell, will give you a little taste of what it's like and what goes on there.
I'm Maura Lynch, Executive Director of the National Christ Child Society. It's my pleasure to be speaking with you today. A lot has happened since we last met in September 2019. 2020 has been quite a year, right? I'm recording from my desk in the national office in Rockville, Maryland. Luckily, our office is set up in a way that allows us to come into the office and the building and still meet the COVID-19 safety precautions. Despite all that's been going on in the nation and the world, our office has been continuing to work and assist our chapters across the U.S. Helping me in the office are Kristen O'Donnell and our newest team member, Karen Bartlett. Let me introduce you to them. Kristen?
Hi, I'm Kristen O'Donnell. I've been working as the NCCS bookkeeper and special projects manager for 4.5 years, and I've been a member of the DC chapter since 2016. I feel very fortunate to work at the national office. It has given me the opportunity to make a difference and be a part of creating a lasting impact for so many in need. I'm here to help you if you have any questions regarding finances, merchandise orders, and any other projects we are currently working on at National. Now I'm going to introduce you to our new office manager, Karen Bartlett. Karen?
Hi, I'm Karen Bartlett, and I'm thrilled to be part of the Christ Child team. I started working at National in July of this year, and it has been a pleasure getting to know you over the phone. One of the many reasons I wanted this job and what really attracted me was the service aspect. Mary Virginia Merrick's idea of find a need and fill it. I also admire Maura's will and ambition to grow National Christ Child, and equally Kristen's knowledge and detail to the numbers. I'm responsible for the membership and donation records, general office support, and of course, supporting you, the chapters, in any way I can to help you succeed in your missions. In short, I'm here to help you. Being new to National Christ Child, I will not always have the answers to your questions, but with Maura and Kristen, together, we can find solutions. Now I'll turn you back over to Maura.
Hi, many of you have not been to our offices before, so I thought I'd give you a 10-cent store. This is the first thing you see when you walk into our office. It's a portrait that was commissioned by former president of the National, Ann Kelly, of Mary Virginia Merrick. And over here, we have a lot of artifacts from Mary Virginia's home, from her original home in Washington, D.C. I call this the canonization corner. And moving down the hall, in here, we have our conference room. And this is where we display a lot of the plaques from the past conventions, as well as some other things from Mary Virginia Merrick's home in Washington, D.C. One of my goals when I started this job was to get the Christ Child Society name out to a larger audience. As you saw earlier, we produced a wonderful video that we encourage all of our chapters to share on your social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, your websites. You should also be seeing some print ads in Catholic media. Remember, we are here to help your chapter facilitate with any social media requests you have. Just pick up the phone and call us or send us an email. Thank you again for tuning in today. I hope to see you all in person next September at the Bolger Center in Potomac, Maryland.
Thank you so much, Maura, Kristen, and Karen. We are so very blessed to have you in our national office. I want to remind all of our chapter members that the staff in the national office is available to answer your questions. And now I'd like to welcome back Carol Pickle, who is going to introduce 2 new National Christ Child initiatives.
I am excited to present to you 2 new national initiatives, which we hope will make some of your work a little easier. As you heard earlier from Angela Schneider, the NCCS Membership Committee has developed a Junior Christ Child membership program that will benefit and help chapters to educate younger people in our communities. This program will educate potential young members on the history, mission, and current programs of Christ Child. It will also help chapters recruit new volunteers and possibly chapter members. The committee researched the various components of several existing junior volunteer programs from chapters in Detroit, South Bend, Summit, Milwaukee, and the National Charity League. They decided that the Summit model would best fit most chapters. The objectives of a Junior Christ Child membership are to extend the mission of NCCS by engaging teens and preteens in activities that will foster awareness, understanding, and active support of children in need of resources in their communities. To design opportunities for parents to join with their children in the activities of the Junior Christ Child and further its mission in the spirit of personal love of the Christ Child. And to create a continuum of membership to an existing chapter of the Christ Child Society. The membership committee has laid out sample guidelines from the Summit chapter, including how to start, membership requirements, structure, and suggested activities. Now, we understand that every chapter is different. You may wish to begin slowly by recruiting students to help with various events, or you may wish to jump right in by advertising at local schools and parishes. Whatever stage you are at, National is here to help. Look for the new Junior Christ Child membership guidelines in an email soon. I don't know about you, but having young people around always seems to energize me, and I hope that you discuss with your boards and members the possibilities of adopting a Junior Christ Child in your chapter. There is another new initiative coming to you from the NCCS Development Committee. I hope you all enjoyed our NCCS ad played at the beginning of this program and during the break. If you missed it, we will play it one last time at the end of our virtual event. Now, the reason for the ad. The National Christ Child Society has been in existence for 133 years. During these years, chapters have come and gone, and many members have added their hands and hearts to the mission. Christ Child members serve children in their communities with a passion consistent with Mary Virginia Merrick's vision. We all do our work quietly and without the need for recognition. In most instances, the Christ Child Society is only known to members and those we partner with and serve. Well, now is the time to change that. Now is the time to let our communities know that we are here and we are helping children in need of resources year after year after year. Not to brag about what we do, but to garner support and new members for our mission. We all have a responsibility to ensure the legacy of Mary Virginia Merrick is viable and thriving for the next 133 years. So with that in mind, National is launching a Get to Know Us campaign, and we invite you to do the same. We have put together an outline and resources to enable you to begin or continue to market your chapter. Our outline includes our general message, areas of interest such as church bulletins, local news outlets, or social media. We provide samples of bulletin inserts, social media posts, newspaper articles, and short write-ups on Mary Virginia Merrick. We know that some chapters have had some great press lately. We hope that you share your success with us at National and let us know what you're doing to get the word out. You will be receiving an email with our Get to Know Us outline and resources. Please contact us with any help you need to get this started. And yes, the video ad will be available to all chapters for their local use. The video will direct interested parties to the National website and the map of our local chapters. Let's make sure going forward that we are known in our local communities. Let's make sure potential partners are aware of Christ Child and know where to find us. But most importantly, let's strive to grow our impact on those children who are in need of resources. Let's continue to make Mary Virginia Merrick proud. Moving right along, it is now my pleasure to introduce Molly Fanning and Eileen Mayer. Eileen is a DC board member, and they will be discussing creating a culture of yes in chapters to encourage members to step up into leadership positions.
On March 7th, the National Board met in person in Dearborn, Michigan for our biannual meeting. We had the audacity to plan Convention 2020 at a beautiful Tucson, Arizona resort with the theme 2020 Vision, Focus on Our Future. And within about 2 weeks, the world radically changed. Our lives were filled with more questions than answers. And yet I think focusing on our future of our chapters and taking time to look for answers is one of the most important things we can do. Perhaps it's the perfect opportunity to take time to ask questions about how we can bring our chapters together and move forward into late 2020 and greater and stronger into 2021. Dwight Eisenhower said, "I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is essential." So things always change, and we sure found that out this year. And Ben Franklin quipped, "If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail." I think they are both saying that creating a culture of discipline and intention is part of our leadership team and is part of our leadership teams and committees, especially because we're all volunteers. We can do better at what we do best in our communities, and that's, of course, serve children in need. I'm here today with Eileen Mayer, a retired federal prosecutor, but she's also a current DC Christ Child Society board member and a member of several nonprofits in the DC area. So we're going to have a short discussion today, which we plan to expand on later this fall in a larger panel discussion focusing on strengthening your chapters and boards. So, hi, Eileen.
Hi.
And I just wanted to say that I think the number one question that the national office and our national board members get from our chapters is how to get members to step up and say yes to leadership positions, especially to be president or the head of a very large fundraiser. So what are some things that chapters can do to create a culture of yes at taking a turn to leadership?
Molly, that's the age-old problem to which, unfortunately, there's really no easy answer. But I've thought about it over the last few days since we had our original talk, and I do have some ideas that I'm happy to share with you. First of all, I think it's really important for our leadership to model the fact that being a leader is a really rewarding experience. And making sure that people beneath them understand that it's not, you're not there left all by yourself trying to do the job. That's why we have lots of people in the organization. There's people behind you, and they have your back. So it's not going to be a one-person event. I think that one really good way to try to get people more at ease with the idea of being a leader is to let them get involved in smaller things. Ask a person to be on a committee, or give them a small special project, like perhaps feeding some of your families in a pandemic, something like that. It shows them that being a leader, running something, is a doable task, and that they can do it. It gives them a chance to test their own moxie. The other thing that I think is really important is to make sure that your organization has a group that whose job it is to maintain a list and always have their eye out for the future leaders. It could be a trustee committee. It could be, in DC, we have something called the nominating committee, which is chaired by our immediate past president, who's had a long time to observe the organization and see who the people that are coming up that could be put into leadership. It means, and having a group like that means that nobody is starting from scratch when it comes to trying to figure out who is going to be put into the next leadership positions. And then the other thing is testing people to help make sure that not only do we have people on the bus, but we have people on the bus in the right seats. And be assured that none of this is a single year event. All of this is information that's gathered over time and passed on from one generation of leaders to the next. So finally, knowing that, it's always important for the leaders, I think, to have in the back of their mind, when you meet people in the organization, what job would that person be good for? Because there's always a job out there that can teach somebody that they can be a great leader.
Right. Oh, I think so too. I'm blessed to be in the Columbus chapter that's really always taken its cues from the member resources provided by National. And so as a member and a leader, I knew I didn't have to come up with everything on my own. I didn't have to have all the answers. There was a lot of resources available to me, back in the day before the website was so robust, it was kind of a big notebook, but it still worked. And it's what we use, the chapter, what we used to call the OMG or the Oh My God, it's now the chapter guide. And but as a leader on a board, there might be 4 pages that apply to you. It's not that whole book. And so you can really hone in on some basic suggestions on how to get things done and how to organize yourself. And I think that that's really kind of a key role the national can play to help chapters get those leaders in place. Columbus too has a nominating committee, and I'm sure that board structure is part of what national recommends, chaired by the past president. And, as you said, she's always had this vision of people who have stepped up, people who have said yes, people who have done a great job. Another person that's oftentimes on the nominating committee is the membership chair, or the person who's bringing in new members and leading them through their provisional years, because they really get to know people, and in a way that that they have some real good suggestions for that committee. And maybe the project chair, if they're observing and getting reports and communication from all the project leaders, they're again really getting to know some of the members who have stepped up in at least in some way to say yes. So that really helps with that foundation and framework. So
I had one other thought too, and
Sure.
that is we are a national organization. I think that last time I heard there were 44 chapters around
I
the
think
country.
we're getting closer to 45, so we're
Great.
we're growing, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, but if you look around the country, there's bound to be a chapter that's just like yours.
Right.
And because we have a national office, it's a phone call away to call to the national office, call to Maura, and say, I need somebody to talk to about how do I deal with this situation? And chances are there's somebody who's dealt with it. So
Right.
share resources, reach out and get help, not just written help, but call somebody up and say, how did you deal with this? Or what do I do here? And chances are somebody's dealt with it, and you should not have to reinvent the wheel, figure out, what they try to find somebody else who's dealt with it and use their examples.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things that we it's put in place this year, and so it's really just started, is what we call a chapter liaison program. So each board member is assigned just a role to communicate with a chapter, each chapter member. So each board member has 4 chapters or so, and some of them are close to them in proximity. Some of them, some of them know people in certain chapters. It doesn't matter, but that's part of a level of communication that we're trying to break down any barriers and open up communication. And again, I'm gonna need a drink here. Again, make sure that people don't feel like they're alone.
Right. That's great. That's really foresightful planning on the part of national.
So we're talking about chapter leadership, and you talked a little bit about this, my favorite little book, called Good the Great from the Social Sector by Jim Collins. And he talks about, his nomenclature is funny, but it makes sense. He talks about getting the right people on the bus and getting the right people in the right places. And so can you kind of help expand again a little bit on some of your advice for that?
Yeah, everybody has a different strength, and I think that the most important thing is to identify what people's strengths are, but then also to identify where you need people. What seats do you have on your bus, and what kind of person do you need to fill that seat? And it can be different in any given year depending on what your organization is doing that year. If they're, special emphasis on fundraising, or special emphasis on strategic planning, or whatever you're facing. And
am I correct, Eileen, in that someone from the DC chapter knew you were retiring and perhaps a little more available, and reached out to you and said, won't you join us? We need you.
Right. And they knew that I had had some experience especially doing board development in other areas, and that I actually, the nerd that I am, I actually think it's really interesting.
I have a little bit of that nerd streak too.
Yeah. They reached out and asked me to do things that, focus on that. So it's really a matter of, everybody kind of pulling toward your same goal, which is meeting your mission.
Right, absolutely.
You have to look for your big picture people. You have to look for your fundraisers. There are a lot of people who say, absolutely, I won't do that. But there's a lot of people who have no problem with cold calling or, reaching out to that foundation in your area. You have to have the worker bee. The person who's going to be there stuffing the envelopes. And you also have to have a detail-oriented people who won't let things get by.
Right.
And then,
I'm the person that needs the detail people around me. I'm always so reminded of my terrible weaknesses when people will say, well, what's the goal with this? And what numbers are we trying to reach? Or have you read that entire contract? I'm like, thank you, cause no. Right. So I always need the accountants and the attorneys and the people who've worked in business to bring me back to the nitty gritty and say, okay, we like our big goal, but let's figure out again how we're going to get there.
How we're going to get there, exactly.
And so, yes, you're right, that mix of people. One of the things that I was thinking about, and I recently listened to an interview with Jim Collins, and he talked about, and I think I can think about the presidents that I've experienced in the Columbus Christ Child Society. Their personalities were so different, and their leadership styles. We got the things done that needed to be done. The boards came together and worked together, but their leadership styles, if you observed them, were different, and their personalities as they led meetings and things like that were very different. And so he talked about, and I think this is really important in a volunteer organization where leadership is rotating and board membership is rotating, to not be dissuaded from saying yes by thinking I'm not charismatic enough, or I don't want to talk in front of people. I'm not that person. But that's not what drives the organization. It's the mission that is the charism. It's the mission that attracts people. It's the mission. If you can learn to express what the mission of your chapter is, and everybody can learn to do that. Everybody can learn to put a little elevator speech together, and because it's really in our hearts, it's already there. We can all express the mission. Then that's the message that brings new members and new leaders all the time. It's not the charism of a member who may not be in the same position in 2 years.
Right. I listened to that myself, and he says, if you have a charismatic cause, you don't need a charismatic leader. Right.
And I really think we do.
Right. And in the DC chapter, we think that the elevator speech is so important that we've actually made little cards with the elevator speech on it, so that you don't have to think for the first 3 floors, oh, what am I supposed to say? You've got something, you can practice it, and it does come from the heart for so many people. So you don't even need that.
Right, absolutely. Well, a few years ago, National was blessed with a bequest, and we had some money to invest in a communications plan. And part of that project, we came up with something that we call the Brand Values Matrix, and it expresses in phrases important ways that Christ Child Society serves members, people, its leaders, etc. And it's set up on a little grid, and so sometimes I think people look at it and kind of go cross-eyed and go, what in the world is this? But if you are a person that is looking for the way to, if you're in any position where you're writing things about Christ Child Society, or you're talking about Christ Child Society, or you're a board member, finding a couple of those phrases that speak to you that you can then personalize, it kind of cuts down the level of the work that you have to do to put those phrases together. Again, it's another tool that National provides. You don't have to make up the words. There's some words and suggestions, and then make them yours.
Right, exactly.
So you don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to make it up. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Exactly.
And so one more thing for this little time of our conversation. Do you have any favorite books or resources? We both have said we're a little nerdy about this, and we like to learn about leadership and running organizations and things like that. Do you have any favorite resources that you could pass on to some of our members?
Well, the first thing I have is, and I have a copy of it here, is it's called the Trustee Handbook. And it's actually, it's printed every year by the NAIS, the National Association of Independent Schools. So it's a school source.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it's got some really great basic information about boards and, fiduciary responsibilities and all the things that we have to worry about, and about how do you develop your board, how do you staff your board, that kind of thing. So that's number one. Number two, we've talked about Jim Collins and his books, From Good to Great and Great by Choice. And I think that they're required reading by anybody who's interested in this thing. And then you've turned me on to this, to the podcast and the blog by Joan Gary from Joan Gary Consulting. She's the one who was interviewing Jim Collins. And she is really hitting the nail on the head. You can find all sorts of good, interesting, 30-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute, 40-minute podcasts that just will keep your interest and really, I think, put some things in your head, maybe not answer exact questions, but give you some good resources for how do you deal with whatever problem arises.
Right. Well, the people she interviews, I just find I'm on her email list. I've never purchased anything from her. And she's obviously, this is her living. She'd like for me to buy her book, and she'd like for me to sign up, to be in her consulting group. But I've really benefited from listening to, like you said, listening to the podcasts that interest me and answer questions that I need answered at the time. And so I do enjoy her. Another person that I like to listen to that really has a positive message is a gal called Gail Perry, and her business is called Fired Up Fundraising. And so the focus is usually on fundraising, but it's just been so positive. And right now she's been doing these live broadcasts on Facebook, and then if you get on her email list, if you don't listen live, you get an opportunity to listen to the recording. And she, like Gail, or like Joan, Gail, like Joan, is interviewing other experts in the field. So you're constantly being introduced to other people who have specific expertise on whatever the topics are that they seem to be covering. And again, you listen for a few minutes, and if it's for you, it's for you. And if it's not, move on to the next adventure. Another book that I read, and I kind of like the resources from this guy because I think he adds a grounding and framework to fundraising because his ground and framework is very faith-based. And so as an organization that calls itself the Christ Child Society, to think of our fundraising grounded in faith rather than business tactics, kind of brings it to a different focus. And so it really helps, again, focus on the right things. Our mission, what are we working towards? How do we explain that mission? And how do we attract people, to that? And he has a very long name that you might not remember. It's Brice, B-R-I-C-E, Sokolowski. But his website is much simpler. It's called catholicfundraiser.net. And so he was very smart in making his website easy to remember. So I think we're good for now for this conversation. And I just wanted to see if you had any last words.
No, I think that I hope that this conversation has made people feel like it's not an insurmountable task to be a leader or to find new leaders in Christ Child, because I think ultimately everybody is there because they have a passion for the mission, and you're going to find the right people that you need.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I want to say thanks to Eileen Mayer from our Washington, D.C. chapter. It's been great to get to know you, at least in this kind of weird way, in this weird time, but also to remind all of you to look for more details about continuing this discussion with some other chapter leaders later in the fall. So thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen and Molly, for a great discussion on board governance. I hope chapter leaders will now find it easier to make the ask, and members will take the leap and say yes to a new and rewarding experience. Well, we have come to the time where the 2018-2020 board hands over governance to the 2020-2022 board. Mary Virginia Merrick has certainly looked out for us, once again, bringing us 6 new, energetic board members. I hope that she is proud of the work we have done over the past 2 years. We have dedicated our term to look at solutions for common chapter issues, and we found joy and satisfaction when you have shared success stories and pictures of smiling faces. We are chapter members first. However, being on the national board changes your perspective of Christ Child. You realize the importance of being part of a national organization. You are amazed at the work that is being done in communities across the nation. And you are heartened by the fact that our mission is in such capable hands. You also develop a strong bond with those who serve with you. Although you only see each other in person twice a year, friendships made are life-lasting. At this time, I want to thank the outgoing board for their service. Those staying on with us are Tricia Boland-Jones, Washington, D.C. As a member of the Development, Communications, and Education Committees, Tricia's contacts in D.C. and her knowledge from personal business experience always add a great deal to our discussions and planning. Becky Sarney, Pasadena. As a member of the Development and Finance Committees, Becky adds to the board much needed attention to detail, as well as great organizational skills and business experience. Angela Schneider, Tucson. Angela is always so cheerful. As chair of the membership committee, she was ready to take on any challenge given to her, and I am quite jealous of her well thought out and professional presentations. Angela also contributed to the conference convention and program committees. Margaret Strong, Summit. Margaret is a bit newer to the board, taking over her position in November 2019, but that did not hold her back from jumping right in. Her practical approach was always greatly appreciated as a member of the Development, Finance, and Membership Committees. And I will be returning as past president, whether they want me or not. Now the hardest part, those leaving us. Beth Barrett, South Bend, 6 years on the board, or Queen of Programs, as I like to refer to her. She's almost single-handedly shaped our current focus on encouraging interactive programs and has been instrumental in all the resource documentation that is available to chapters. Beth also contributed a great deal to the conference convention and communications committees. Loretta Howe, Sarasota, 4 years on the board. Loretta is always such a calming presence. As expansion chair, newly formed chapters retreated to a warm and welcoming NCCS presence. While recording secretary, Loretta also sat on the executive and conference convention committees. Linda Henry, Northern Michigan, 4 years on the board. Linda's past military experience brought great organizational skills as she chaired the conference convention committee and contributed as a member of the programs committee. Casey Long, Atlanta, 2 years on the board. I always enjoy Casey's input as a member of the program and membership committee. She spoke from the heart and was a great advocate for our chapters. Jean Phelan, Milwaukee, 4 years on the board. Jean is a very practical person, which was a perfect fit for her position as treasurer and chair of the finance committee. She also contributed to the executive, membership, and conference convention committees. Her logical thinking was very much appreciated. And lastly, Mary Beth Bacco, Cleveland, 8 years on the board. Mary Beth held several positions over her time on the board. She was chair of several committees, including conference and convention, development, communications, and bylaws. She was a major force in our branding initiative and was a wonderful president and past president. Mary Beth, as they say in The Wizard of Oz, I will miss you most, Scarecrow. And not because you don't have a brain, but because you are just so gracious, level-headed, and so much fun to be around. Now, if you're counting and really paying attention, you will note that I left out one especially important person, and that, of course, is Molly Fanning, the new president of NCCS. Although I have loved my time as president, I have no hesitation in turning over the reins and may even give a little sigh of relief. Molly is a smart, caring, and thoughtful woman. Her insights from reading various organizational and inspirational books are spot on. This will be her 5th year on the board, and she has chaired the Education and Communications Committees and been part of the Executive, Development, and Program Committees. I can assure you that we are all in very capable hands during the next 2 years. So Molly, it gives me much pleasure to introduce you as the new president of NCCS and hand you the ever powerful gavel.
Thank you, Carol. Before I relay my hopes for the Christ Child Society, I also want to thank those who are leaving the board. It's an understatement to just say your contributions have been important. They have been so much more. And I can't promise that you've heard the last of us. I also want to sing the praises of Carol Pickle. I think it would be fair to say that her term from the beginning days has been filled with unexpected upheaval. From the search for a new executive director to COVID-19, Carol has handled every moment with calm and grace that speaks to her phenomenal capacity to lead us successfully through uncharted waters. The Book of Esther talks about Queen Esther being the one for a time such as this. And even if, like that famous duck saying, Carol was calm on the surface and paddling like heck underneath, her calm outward demeanor and even temperament kept the board always moving forward and positive. She's truly the person we needed for a time such as this. There are many times when she stated that her prayers for the intercession of Mary Virginia Merrick on behalf of our efforts were answered. And I think the Lord's peace is the foundation of her calm. Carol, I'm looking forward to the next 2 years, and I'm grateful that you will continue as a mentor to me and to all of the new board. And I wish I could hug you right now and hand you a big bouquet. I'm glad to know you're still a board meeting, a phone call, a text, or an email away. And I would like once again to introduce the incoming board of the National Christ Child Society. I'm Molly Fanning, Columbus, Ohio, your president. Angela Schneider, Tucson, Arizona, president-elect. Carol Pickle, Pasadena, past president. Catherine Thompson, Atlanta, Georgia, treasurer. Jane Larson, Toledo, Ohio, recording secretary. Katie Gantner, Detroit, Michigan. Becky Sarney, Pasadena. Tricia Boland Jones, Washington, D.C. Margaret Whelan Strong, Summit, New Jersey. Susan Ferraro Smith, Cleveland, Ohio. Teresa Moeller, Toledo, Ohio. Charles Alfano, Western Massachusetts. Thank you for saying yes. I'm looking forward to working with you, but mostly to getting to know all of you better over the next 2 years. It is said that some version of the phrase, be not afraid, appears in the Bible 365 times. This gives me a certain amount of peace with God's daily plan. Jesus commands us several times through the Gospels not to worry. In Luke, he says, "And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life?" I love to read about the inspiring life of Mary Virginia Merrick and the hurdles of pain and paralysis she overcame to further her heroic, God-given mission to serve the poor and see the Christ child in all. Pope Francis just reminded us once again that Christian charity is not simple philanthropy. On one hand, it is looking at others through the eyes of Jesus himself, and on the other hand, seeing Jesus in the face of the poor. I truly believe that it is the Christ-filled charism of Mary Virginia Merrick's faith-filled mission that has ensured the longevity and expansion of the Christ Child Society. We may feel like the first 9 months of 2020 have put the world through a ringer. As a board on March 7th of 2020, we had the audacity to plan a convention theme of 2020 vision, planning for our future, at a beautiful resort in Tucson, Arizona. There's an old saying about making plans and God laughing, but I don't think God thinks any of this is funny. As for having a clear view of the future in the Christ Child Society, I say, be not afraid. The Christ Child Society has advanced and expanded through being founded by a very young single laywoman. World War I, the flu pandemic of 1918, the Great Depression, and World War II. And that's just to name a few worldwide struggles before 1950. The strength of her founding mission to serve children while proudly proclaiming the name of Christ has continued to inspire thousands of volunteers to serve even more thousands of children over 133 years. We will make it through 2020. I've been thrilled to see chapters find ways to fill needs in your communities. Keep sharing your accomplishments on Facebook and other social media. It's such a great way for us to share the good word and attract people to our mission. Please follow the national Facebook page and follow other chapters as well to take inspiration for what's going on all over the country. Lead with the positive. Don't say your activities are canceled. Tell us how you're doing things differently for a while. If we're going to follow our Lord's command to not worry and not be afraid, what can we be instead? We can strive to be great. I was recently inspired to reread this little book by Jim Collins called Good to Great in the Social Sector, Why Business Thinking is Not the Answer. I would suggest all of you get it and read it. It's under $10, and it's also available at many libraries. It has some unusual nomenclature, but it's pretty easy to get inspired by this little book. And if you really like it, his website is filled with free content, even some aimed at nonprofits. We have all experienced the slowing down of our volunteer schedule, so in the end of 2020 may be a perfect time to take stock of your chapter, how it operates, and make sure your programs are aligned with your mission. It might be prudent to create a forward-thinking strategic plan for intentional growth of membership and growth of services in your community. I was introduced to Good to Great book when my chapter completed a strategic plan a few years ago. Everyone on the committee read it, so we could have a united mindset to work from. Maybe your board can do the same. The little book is about creating a culture of discipline that is much needed in a volunteer organization to create a culture of greatness. Notice I said great, I didn't say big. It's a commitment to be disciplined and intentional in your approach. It gets things done without panic. It makes volunteer work go smoothly. When volunteer work goes smoothly, people are happy to say yes again and again. And when I say disciplined, I don't mean all consuming. I'm kind of a big picture person, so I need a calendar, a goal, a schedule, and a deadline to provide a framework of discipline to focus on the nitty-gritty of the details. Lucky for us, our volunteer organizations can work to assemble boards, committees, and teams of people whose variety of strengths and talents balance each other out. Don't be afraid to ask your benefactors for donations right now. They believed in you before. They want to hear from you now. They want to know you care about them, and they want to find out how you are serving and what you need. Many of our chapters have had creative and successful virtual fundraisers. They were everything from well-worded letters to Detroit's example of using fun video recordings to promote their raffle, and keep reaching out to your members, especially those who may not be ready to resume volunteering. Even if your ability to gather in person is still restricted, we all want to touch base with people. We look forward to gathering in the near future. Kudos to the Toledo chapter that posted photos of a rather spread out, but obviously successful gathering as prospective members. Potential members know the needs are growing. Let them know how they can help you by joining. And many of you are safely gathering to carry out your programs. We are living by our motto to find a need and fill it. Columbus had an outdoor baby shower that honored a much-loved founding member who is 90 years young and still very active. South Bend had a diaper drive, and people were incredibly generous. Obviously, follow the guidelines set out by your state for dealing with the tail end of this COVID mess, but be creative. People are longing to connect. People feel the need to serve, even with the weirdness of mandated masks and social distancing rules. To sum this up, you can tell I'm a reader, and for the next 2 years, I'm sure I'll be sending you information about organizations and leadership and fundraising from my favorite experts that inspire me and I hope inspire you. After all, why reinvent the wheel? Take the nuggets you learn and apply them to what works for you. Our relationship, national and chapters, should be illustrated by a daisy or a sunflower. We are the center of the organization, not dictating from the top down. Our vision from the future is connected at the center by Mary Virginia Merrick's vision of mission. So I ask you not to be afraid to make some plans and move forward, because you are not in this alone as a chapter. We will work together to enact the mission of Mary Merrick to serve all children in need, planting the seeds of success for your chapters and for the children you serve. The outgoing board has spent many hours updating member resources on our website, available to you 24/7. There are 12 real people on the board, plus the office, who love to talk with you to help you get your great local work done. Your chapter liaisons will be reconnecting with you soon. And we know that only through you is the mission of Mary Virginia Merrick accomplished. And we are here to do everything we can to help you focus on our future, to find a need and fill it, because nothing is ever too much to do for a child. On behalf of the National Christ Child, current and immediate past board members, I want to thank you for tuning in today. Your patience, understanding, and support as the board and the National Christ Child Society staff negotiated our first ever, and quite frankly, what we are hoping is a once-in-a-lifetime virtual convention, is much appreciated. As you know, we were hoping to meet this year in the beautiful Lowe's Ventana Canyon Resort in Tucson, Arizona. Luckily, we were able to negotiate with them, and we have agreed to hold our next convention in 2022 at this resort. And we will have the 2021 conference to plan before that. And dear God, please don't laugh at our plans. Save the date for 2021 National Christ Child Society Conference, September 7th, 17th, and 18th, 2021. This event is going to be held in a new location, the Bolger Center in Potomac, Maryland. It is a pastoral retreat location that will be perfect for us. Thank you again for all you do in the name of the Christ Child Society. Now here, once again, is our spiritual advisor, Monsignor Jenkins, with a final blessing.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. May God, the source and origin of all blessing, grant you grace, pour out his blessing in abundance, and keep you safe from harm throughout the year. May he give you integrity in the faith, endurance in hope, and perseverance in charity, with holy patience to the end. May he order your days and your deeds in his peace, grant your prayers in every place, and lead you happily to eternal life. And may the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit come down on you and remain with you forever. Amen.
If you've always cared to reach out to others and you've always believed that every child deserves a dignified life, then you are aware that the needs of your community are many and you want to do more. Get to know us. For over 130 years, we have dedicated our lives to children in communities across the nation. Our volunteers focus on indispensable support for children in need so they can build self-esteem and independence. We are Christ Child Society. We provide newborn baby bundles, necessities and education for new mothers, mentoring, tutoring, and interactive educational and literacy programs. We do this because we believe that when we invest in our children, we invest in our collective future, and it starts with you. Reward yourself with the experience of being part of something bigger. Get to know Christ Child Society today.
Hi, I'm Maura Lynch, the Executive Director for the National Christ Child Society. I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and hopefully next year we'll see you in person at the 2021 conference in Bethesda. Right now, I want to wish you all have a great weekend, and God bless. Thank you.